Good evening. Welcome to the February 15th meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. We have a zoning agenda tonight with 3 zoning articles, a public hearing well, I won't read, I guess I should read all. I'm not going to read all of these because I have to read the public notices into the record, and that'll just be redundant. So, Jim, if you're ready, we can start. Just a reminder, this is being recorded. I will read these legal notices. They cover all 3 zoning articles. Town of Westborough Office of Planning Board notice of public hearing. The Town of Westborough Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, the 15th of February, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. in the Great Hall of the Forbes Building at 45 West Main Street, Westborough, Mass. On the following articles to appear on the warrant for the March 25th, 2023 Westborough Annual Town Meeting. 1, to see if the town will vote to adopt the reorganizing and renumbering of the zoning bylaw of the town as set forth in the final draft of the zoning bylaw dated January 2023 on file with the Westborough Planning Board and Town Clerk, said reorganizing and renumbering of the zoning bylaw having been done under the direction of the Planning Board. All zoning bylaws as amended heretofore in force shall be repealed, except that such repeal shall not affect any suit or proceeding pending as the result of an existing law or what it will do in relation thereto. 2, to see if the town will vote to adopt the changes to the zoning bylaw as set forth in the final draft dated January 2023, including amending the following sections of the bylaw. Article 1, general provisions and definitions. Article 2, administration and enforcement. Article 3, site plan review and design review. Article 4, zoning districts. Article 5, use and dimensional regulations. Article 6, special use and development regulations. Article 7, accessory uses and structures. Article 8, general regulations on file with the Westborough Planning Board and Town Clerk. Number 3, to see if the town will vote to amend its zoning bylaw section 8.2 signs and outside display by amending subsection C, paragraph 6, projecting signs, and by amending subsection E, paragraph 7, historical districts and or national register properties, or take any action thereon. A copy of the entire proposed zoning amendments are on file with and can be viewed at the offices of the Westborough Planning Board and Westborough Town Clerk during their business hours. Any person interested or wishing to be heard on the proposed amendments should attend the public hearing indicated above. And that's sincerely the Westborough Planning Board, and that was in the published in the Telegram and Gazette on January 31st and February 7th. Okay, so I'm going to turn this over to Jim. He's got a PowerPoint for us. We all had a chance to review these. Jim, how do you want to do it? Do you want us to just raise questions as you go through, or do you want to wait till the end?
Well, until there's some public in the room, and I don't see anyone in the room, I would say do as you please. I intend to present all 3 separately. They're all in a row, reflecting the number that they were placed on the warrant. So we have Articles 29 through 31. I'm going to start with 29, and 29 actually explains both 29 and 30. So if you want to stop me at any time, it's pretty open. I would say if you had public in the room, I'd make the presentation and then have the board entertain questions. But since there's no one here, you may as well do it free form.
Okay, Jim, why don't you take it away then?
Okay. A little bit slow here. I'm very slow. I apologize for this.
Unless it's plugged in.
Okay. Thank you. So Article 29 is to replace the entire Westborough zoning bylaw. Our purpose is to codify the existing bylaws through the reorganization and renumbering of the current bylaw language and content to produce a more understandable and intuitive set of regulations. So this article only renumbers and reorganizes the bylaw. But in order to do that, we have to delete the existing bylaw and replace it with the new bylaw in its entirety. No substantive changes are made. No language changes are made. Only the reorganization and the renumbering of the bylaw. Nothing else. In 2021, the town hired General Code, a zoning bylaw review company offering legal review and recodification services for municipalities desiring to update their zoning bylaws. So over the past 2 years, together with the Planning Board Zoning Bylaw Review Group, composed of the Building Commissioner and Economic Development Director, the Chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, the Town Planner, and one member of the Planning Board, John Pizzoni, sitting here to my right, worked to reorganize and renumber the existing zoning bylaws together with General Code. And General Code looked at the entire existing bylaw and basically found that some of it was not intuitive, and they wanted to reorganize it. The next slide will show how they did that. Oh, a little more discussion. The 2-year effort resulted in reforming the existing bylaws, also suggesting content amendments, which will be the subject of the next article, Article 30. This article only proposes the reorganization and renumbering of the existing bylaws. This, just to be redundant, this is organizational only, and I make that point numerous times because it's important that people understand we're not changing any of the content, not even a word. So the existing bylaw will be organized in a new format with new sections and numbering. The existing language and content remains unchanged. So here you can see, I'm hoping you can see on your laptops or on your screens at the table, the new proposed sections on the left with the new numbering and formatting, and the old sections on the right following in parentheses. So for example, our new purpose section is going to be section 1.1, formerly section 1100, and applicability, which was formerly section 1600, and so on down through the list. What we did is we grouped sections that were more intuitive together. So you'll see this in the next slide. So you can see here there was a lot of juggling. Establishments of district went into the zoning district section. It was formerly in a separate section, as you can see, section 2110. Then the official zoning map was 2120 to 2140. And then you can see we added the Aquifer Protection District. These are all zoning districts. Previously, the section, the 5,000 section, was for specific regulations. It wasn't under the zoning districts. It belonged under the zoning districts, so we reorganized it. We did the same thing with our dimensional regulations, which is Article 5. Then we have a section under special uses and development regulations, accessory uses and structures, and then general regulations. And the general regulations cover things that would be applicable throughout the zoning bylaw, like parking and loading requirements, signage and outside display, environmental controls, and earth moving and clearing of property. So that's how we reorganized the zoning bylaws. And again, this only has to do with organization and renumbering. So the benefits of the new bylaw is they're better organized, they're easier to understand, they're easily searchable, which was a key to the previous bylaw, was not easily searchable. And oftentimes people had trouble finding things. We'd get a lot of phone calls or emails trying to find sections. The new bylaw will be searchable, so you could just click on the topic that you were interested in and you would be taken directly to that section of the bylaw. And they're easily modified in the future. So before, let me go back a slide or two. Under this section that we call special uses and development regulations, you'll see that they were numbered in the 400s, the 200s, and the 500s, and they were spread out all over the place we would just add a new section at the end of the bylaw. They weren't categorized by topic. They will now be categorized by topic. It'll be more, as I said, intuitive. It'll be a lot easier to understand and a lot easier to search. So that's Article 30. Again, it's just the renumbering and the reorganization. None of the content and none of the language has been changed.
Follow this numbering, like they're not going to change.
No. So if this article passes, the future article will refer to the new numbering. We'll be stuck with the old.
Do we skip over?
I'm not sure I would do that. I think I would make content changes where they allow it. And then we'll just go back under the old numbering.
Why would you not want to approve this one?
I'm just saying.
Okay.
Throwing out every option. I would approve it, but
No, it's going to be easier for the user.
I think
Fred is here, so our
I don't think we
zoning
would be
enforcement
here if
officer
we-
is here. I'm sure he's in favor.
I don't think we'd be here if we didn't think this was going to pass, so let's deal with positive thinking here, John.
You might want to ask Fred what he thinks the benefits of the reorganization is.
Fred, do you want to comment on that? What do you feel the benefits are? I mean, I think they're obvious, but I do like to hear from your perspective, since you're the enforcement officer on all of these.
Let's see if I can get to a mic.
Yeah.
Hi, Fred Lenaro, Community Development Director. Yeah, we worked with General Code on this, and the intent was to number it and organize it as other towns that they've dealt with. And certainly, I've looked at a few other towns, but I don't have the expertise they do as far as how the organization would go. But yes, I'd be fully in support of the way it's been reorganized. The intent was to make it more rational and organized.
Yeah, no, I think it does. And I don't really have a lot of comments on it other than, I know when I'm trying to find something in our existing bylaws, I'm flipping through it, trying to figure out where it is, and
it'll be way
and I've been doing it. I can only imagine somebody new to town, a new applicant, trying to use our existing bylaws to figure out what they can and can't do.
Well, and I would add, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say that obviously, since we're going to have a new planning director, make it much easier for him to understand what's going on in this town.
Yeah.
If we can look at this logically than having to figure out how this is arranged, because I found it and I still find it, and I'm very used to zoning codes. I found this almost impossible to use because it's so hard to find things.
Well, I think Jim's leaving us in a good situation. He's cleaning this,
Right.
He's really driven this to get it cleaned up before he leaves, so that whoever does take over will have a firm foundation. I think that's a positive step. It's taken a lot of time.
Yes. I mean, you think about all the town meetings over the years where we've amended the zoning bylaws. I always feel like it's been a Band-Aid approach, trying to approve the bylaws. This has been a comprehensive, thorough review by professional zoning attorneys. The person that was our assigned attorney does nothing but this all day long. So I was actually amazed that they could turn it around as quickly as they did. And they gave us multiple drafts, first on the organizational format. Then they asked us 85 questions, 86 questions, I think, on the bylaw, which resulted in 75 changes, which is the subject of the next article. So I feel it was very thorough. Together with our group, the 4 individuals that met numerous times, regular standing meetings on Thursday mornings to go over all the changes. And then we made suggestions back to the attorney on how we wanted it formatted, suggestions on the substance of the language. We asked a ton of questions. I feel like this is a really good effort.
Well, I guess I should thank that entire group for all the hard work.
Yeah, absolutely. Not me, but John and Justin were, I meant to mention that they were helpful, and they look at a lot of bylaws, the two of them, based on their personal business.
Yeah.
So it seemed to me that they were, it was easier for them to go through the bylaw too. I will mention, if you don't add this, and you might want to, Jim, is that the company we dealt with, I don't know if I'm too loud, no, the company I dealt with, that we dealt with as a group is General Code. They will host the bylaw in perpetuity as long as we pay them an annual fee. So it'll be hosted to them electronically, and they have search features, and they will update the bylaw. So previously, at least in my tenure at town, it's always been a struggle to get the bylaw updated every time we've made a zoning change. So obviously there's a fee, but for a reasonable fee, hopefully, we can have the bylaw continually updated and hosted through a website, so we don't have to try to screw around with the bylaw in the future as well.
Yeah, I've seen that in other towns, so.
That's a
Thank
good
you.
point. I'm going to make note of that. I'll add this to this slide.
Well, I'm sure Justin's watching, but if he's not, would you pass along my thanks to him for his efforts too? All right, so Jim, how do you want to do the voting on this? Do you want to move? Well, first of all, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here for the public? Any public comments at all by email? No, okay.
So you'll need an individual vote on each article.
Right.
And if you're okay with the language in the article, and so the article language is pretty broad. It's that way deliberately. So if you're okay with that broad language, you should move the article, you should move to support the article as written in the warrant.
Okay.
So that's the key.
I'm fine with that on this one. I was going to talk to the board about the next article because it is so complex and because we do often get, I don't want to say nitpicked, but we get some very detail-oriented people at town meeting. I don't know if, if now that we've put this out there and discussed it publicly, if we might want to just continue it to next week to see if any comments come in that week. We have to close the hearing before the warrant closes, but the warrant doesn't close till the 28th. I don't necessarily know that we need to continue it, but, I'd like to give anybody who wants to critique the changes an opportunity to get that to us ahead of time rather than on town meeting floor. Understand what I'm hoping to accomplish with that? I mean, obviously, there's a groundswell of interest in this. This article, I think we can close. It's not as complex as the next one, but this one, the next one, and possibly the sign one, might be worth continuing for a week just to hear what people.
So discuss it tonight, but then.
Discuss it
continue the
tonight,
decision.
leave it open,
Yeah,
and
fine.
then we'll close the hearing next week and
So-
make a vote.
Not next week, the 28th.
Well, we have a meeting on the 21st.
Yeah, that's what yeah.
I don't think you were here.
I wasn't here last.
Yeah.
I
so-
can't make a meeting on the 21st.
Yeah, I'm not there either.
Okay. Jim, we need 3 for quorum. Do we need 3 to close a hearing?
Yes.
So do we not have a meeting on the 28th?
No meeting on the 28th. Our next meeting after our next meeting would be March 15th. Yeah, we canceled the March 7th meeting and moved it to March 15th. I did send you an invite to that.
Well, Mark, if they're closing the warrant on
They're closing the warrant on the 28th.
it's the same night we'd be meeting.
No, we're meeting on the 21st.
Okay. That's-
My understanding.
I thought we were meeting on the
Unless I-
28th, because the 21st was the middle of vacation.
I thought we all said,
So I thought we'd moved it to the 28th.
where I wish.
We're meeting on the 28th.
Okay, then I was wrong, perfect. No, that's it.
Because of vacation, so the problem is that if we don't close the public hearing today, it's not going to make any difference whether we get any
No, we'll
public
have to,
comments.
we'll have to close it tonight. You're
Yeah,
right.
or
I
not.
thought we were
because-
meeting next week.
Yeah,
that's my bad.
exactly.
All right, so that whole discussion is moot at this point, yeah, all right. Does somebody want to make a motion on, I'm sorry, do we have an article number, Jim?
It's Article 30.
29.
29, right.
Or 29. Wait,
This is 29, the
it's Article 30, I think.
It's Article 29.
29,
Move from the draft.
The most recent draft, which is draft 6, this is Article 29, the first one. The second one is 30, and the last one's 31.
Oh, then they changed the draft, because I guess I had the last one.
You might have a previous draft.
Right.
Actually, I don't think the numbers changed even since the previous draft.
Well, the thing is that I have, the one you sent me is, okay, 29's fine. Okay,
I move the planning board supports Article
got to
29.
close the public
Oh,
hearing.
sorry.
you can close, you can move that.
I move to close the public hearing.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor of closing the hearing, that's 5-0. On a motion.
I move that the planning board supports Article 29 as written.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on that motion? All those in favor?
I think it's as written in the warrant.
As written in the warrant.
I think that, is everybody fine with that? All those in favor?
Clarification, sorry.
Yeah, all right. So that was 5-0 in favor.
Who gave the second?
I did.
John did. Okay, thank you.
All right. Jim, I will turn it back to you for Article 30, this one
Yes, so thank you.
more complex.
Article 30 in the warrant is to amend the zoning bylaws. So this is the article that will make substantive changes, and we consider even a number change, a language change, a name change to be a substantive change. The last article just renumbered and reordered the existing bylaws without any changes to content. This article proposes numerous language changes, and we're going to deal with the general changes first, and then there were 75 specific changes. Of the 75, our review group felt that not all 75 are difficult to understand. We picked out about 15 or 16 that we felt needed further explanation. So this evening, I'm going to deal with the 15 or 16. Town meeting will have the entire warrant, and the entire warrant will have all 75 proposed changes. They can be questioned individually. I will provide the same explanation or any additional explanation that you think needs to be made. So of the ones that I chose, you may think there are additional ones that also need additional explanation, and I will do that if you feel that that should be done. But for now, for this evening, I'm going to just deal with the ones that we thought, the four of us in our review group, needed further explanation. But the town warrant will have all 75 printed in the warrant.
Jim, I know when we do the finances and John goes through the different, things and then he just highlights those in which there are questions. Is there any way to deal with that, with this, where there are things like definitions and things that are not really substantial, so that there's some way that we can cut down on maybe isolating those in which there'd be questions, but at the same time then, do a block vote on all those that are not going to be questioned, which are just changes in a definition, for various things.
Yeah, I think that's a really good suggestion. I will ask the town moderator if he could do that. And then he would tell the voters at the start of the article that that's how he was going to do it.
I just thought that might speed up the whole process instead of
Great idea, Hazel. I think
going
that's
through.
Very good suggestion. I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
So I'm just going to proceed then as I had intended. So the purpose of this article is to bring the town's zoning bylaws current with various state laws and statutes, and to make the bylaw terminology consistent with contemporary language and understanding. This will be accomplished by adopting the proposed general and specific revisions to the zoning bylaw. The general revisions. These revisions are not substantive in that the meaning or the intent of the terminology is not altered. These revisions update the bylaw to be consistent with state law and state statute, or make terminology consistent with contemporary language. So the general revisions, so now you can see what I mean by they're not changing the meaning. References to the Massachusetts general laws are standardized to the following: Mass General Law chapter, and then there would be the chapter number and the section number. The term building inspector and zoning enforcement officer are amended to building commissioner. So wherever either the building inspector or the zoning enforcement officer are cited in the bylaw, that will be changed to building commissioner. The term Board of Appeals is amended to Zoning Board of Appeals. Board of Appeals is a general term that's used across the state, but we want to be specific that it's the Zoning Board of Appeals. The term chairman is amended to chairperson. The term zoning bylaws is amended to zoning bylaw. All references to the BA high-rise apartment district are deleted. This district was removed from the zoning bylaw at a previous town meeting several years ago. The district no longer exists. Reference to the single residential zone are amended to single residential zone. So this looks the same to me.
It's residence and residential.
I'm sorry?
It's the difference is residence and residential.
Yes, thank you very much. That is it. Single residence zone is amended to single residential zone. References to special permit granting authority is amended to SPGA to abbreviate it so that it shortens the bylaw itself. Specific revisions. These changes are considered substantive amendments in that the language may have been added or deleted, or the meaning may have been altered. There are 75 such substantive changes. They're listed, all of them are listed in the warrant. The planning board felt that some of the listed substantive revisions should be further explained, as meaning may have been changed or regulations added or redefined. Specific revisions noted refer to the noted numbers in the warrant. So the first revision that we felt should be further explained is noted as number 13 in the warrant, section 2.3C1. And this section refers to the renumbered and reorganized bylaw that was just amended in the previous warrant, article. So section 2.3C1 is amended to change shall lapse within 6 months to shall lapse within a period of not more than 3 years. This refers to special permits. The State Zoning Act, Chapter 48, was amended by executive order to extend the life of a special permit before it lapses to 3 years. An applicant receiving a special permit must exercise its right under the permit within 3 years of the date that the permit was granted. So previously, our local zoning bylaw said 2 years, and the state statute said 2 years. The governor, by executive order several years ago, about a decade ago, amended that and extended it to 3 years. We've been observing the 3 years, but we have not amended our bylaws to come consistent with the amended Chapter 48. Any questions? Okay. Change number 14 is section 2.4. The lead-in paragraph is amended to change 75 days to 100 days. This change refers to the number of days that the permit granting authority for a variance, which is the Zoning Board of Appeals, has to act after the filing of an appeal, application or petition. The change is necessary to conform with state statute. So the state statute was amended to allow an additional 25 days, extending the time to respond by the Zoning Board of Appeals from 75 to 100 days. No questions? Number 16, Section 2.8 is amended to change the fine amount from not more than $100 for each violation to not more than $300 for each violation, except where another penalty is provided.
Did you skip 15?
Yeah, he's only picked,
sorry,
he's only doing certain ones.
sorry,
that might-
Yeah, number 15 is in your handout,
Sorry.
but we didn't feel that that was not explained well, so we moved on to number 16.
Yeah, so there's only about, he's only going through about 15 of
Yeah.
the 75.
Yeah.
That might be more complex than the remaining 60.
On number 16, Jim, I would suggest that you point out what the violation is for, because someone's going to raise their hand and say, what's the violation for? I mean, all you've said is, there's a change in it, but you don't tell us what the
Yeah, what is section 2.8?
Yeah, right.
Just to, even if you just say section 2.8.
That's all I'm saying, is that
Covers
the sort of thing
whatever.
someone will say, what violations does this cover?
Okay, the increase in fine is to come into conformance with the state statute regarding violations under the provisions of a zoning bylaw, so this refers to the zoning bylaws, or any conditions under which a building or occupancy permit is issued, or any decision rendered by a special permit granting authority or a permit granting authority or a special permit granting authority. This has to do with violations of the zoning bylaw. Special permits are mentioned in the zoning bylaw. Occupancy and building permits are part of the state building code. If you want more explanation, I'm sure Fred can offer that. This is any violation of those permits. But I will look up 28 to explain where it's referenced in the bylaw.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. It's really any condition under which a building or occupancy permit is issued or any decision rendered by a special permit granting authority. Really, almost anything could be fine if they were given a building permit.
Right, that's fine. As I said, it's a sort of question when you get something like that.
Good point.
Do you have a comment on that?
Fred Lenaro, Community Development Director. So this section allows me, the zoning enforcement officer, to basically give a fine of up to $300 per day per offense on anything related to the zoning bylaw. So it doesn't cover any one particular item in the bylaw. It just allows me, if there's a violation, it gives me the ability to give a non-criminal ticket, if you will.
Out of curiosity, do you do many of these?
I try not to. We have done them, but not very frequently. It's basically a line of last defense. But we have, in Westborough, I've only done it once, and we actually ended up waiving it.
Is there any kind of appeal process if somebody doesn't agree with?
Yes, it's similar to any non-criminal ticket. It gets paid through the clerk. So you have the option of either paying it or appealing it. If you appeal it, it actually goes to a clerk magistrate, and it goes through that process to appeal the fine. I guess the third option is to do nothing. If you do nothing, then it's up to the town whether we pursue it through a court action. So it is considered a non-criminal.
We don't encourage that.
We don't encourage it. No, we don't. I use it sparingly.
All right. I just want to, I just want people to understand that we're not going to be slapping $300 fines on people if their shed is in the wrong, too close to the property line.
No, and in fact,
Yeah, I wouldn't appear in that. It's just people that, you issue a building permit and somebody puts up where it's not supposed to be, well then, you could issue it on that kind of thing. I mean, this is not a penalty, essentially. It's really for people that have done things which they shouldn't have done, are they not? So,
Well, $300 a day is a penalty.
Right,
but if
well,
they
I
didn't-
know, but-
But if they
Yeah.
did something that earns that penalty, then I think we should have the
Well, if there
clear
is-
language in
yeah,
there. I don't
if it's a
disagree with
del-
that, I just want to make
If it's a
sure.
deliberate violation of the zoning
Want to
code,
make
then
sure
obviously,
people, I just want to make sure people
Yeah.
understand that there is an appeal process that Fred doesn't have, or the building commissioner doesn't have, I don't mean you,
No, I understand.
have, dictatorial.
No, certainly not. The other thing I would point out is that, one, I don't usually use it for building code offenses. I have other avenues I can do that, and I have there's Mass General law that allows me to fine under that. With zoning violations, typically, whatever it may be, I go through a system, it's a verbal warning, blah, blah, blah. When I get to a written warning, that's one of the warnings I will point out is that I have the ability to ticket. So very rarely would I go directly to a ticket for a violation. It'd have to be extremely egregious. And I can't say that I've run into something where I just slap somebody a ticket. I usually give them warnings
Yeah.
building up to the issuance of a ticket.
And in that warning, do you inform them that they could go to zoning board of appeals
Yes.
if they need? Okay. Good.
Yes, they also have that option too. That's one of the other options generally before I ticket is that they can appeal my decision to the ZBA prior to me issuing tickets. So there's usually much conversation before I just say, hey, here's a $300 ticket.
Thanks, Fred. All right. Any other questions on number 16?
Fred, you probably don't need to come to the mic for this, but actually, maybe you should just stay there because this is going to be an involved bylaw. So it says not more than 300.
Correct.
Is there any discretion in that, or if someone were found to be egregiously in violation, would you just fine them 300, or would there be something less than that?
No, I just usually do the maximum amount. I don't usually get into increments, or I haven't in the past. I usually just name the maximum amount.
Okay.
I guess I could discretionarily do it incrementally. And having said that, there may be sections that actually do have, they're actually stepped on the number of violations. I don't know if I know, for instance, the bag violation, it's actually first offense is so much second offense. So I think that comes into play too. So somewhere in the bylaw, it specifically said first offense is so much second offense, then that would supersede that $300.
And that is in the bylaw towards the end.
Okay. All right, more questions on 16? Go ahead.
Number 27, section 4.3C2A is amended as indicated. At the request of the owners, the owner or owners, the town may engage a professional hydrologist or engineer to determine more accurately the location and extent of an aquifer or recharge area, or to review information submitted by the owner or owners, and this is an addition, and may charge the owner or owners for all or part of the cost of the investigation. The underlined words were added for clarification. Mass General Law, Chapter 53G, states that towns have the right to require third-party reviews, where the board or its staff are not qualified to conduct the review. The cost of the third-party review is paid by the property owner or the applicant. That should be or the applicant.
can I go back to 16 and just ask Fred one question?
Number 16.
And does this include fines for sign violations?
Well, yes, because the sign bylaw is part of the bylaw, so any
Right, so
violations.
in other words, you could fine people for signs that have been up there that people just have refused to remove?
I could, yes.
Sorry.
So I guess I
27.
have a completely separate question on this. This is section 4.3C. What does the 2 stand for? It's not a paragraph.
No, it's section 2, subsection 2.
Subsection 2?
Yeah,
Okay.
item A.
Is there a subsection 1?
Yes,
Okay, because it's not numbered.
that's because we're not making any changes.
Okay, so we're just going to say, if we say section 4.3C,
Yes.
and we want to talk about subsection 1, we.
But when, yeah, if we
Again,
did, we would do
It's a
that.
nitpicky thing, but, I would have had 4.31 in the actual bylaws.
What?
Go back, all right. If you were to go back to the beginning of the Aquifer and Watershed Protection District, which Jim doesn't have on the screen,
Yeah.
but 4.3 just is the Aquifer and Watershed Protection District, and that, I don't know, I guess that's page,
Bring my zoning code.
but then you move to the next page, and it's 4.3C subsection 2, and the 2 is in parentheses, but you really don't, I guess you just assume that the first part is subsection 1, but I would have actually put the number in. Where you have subsections, I think you should number each subsection.
Well, so there
just
there
for-
is a subsection 1.
You just don't have the number in there, though. That's,
Well, I don't have it in here because we're not altering it.
no, you don't have it on the screen. I'm talking about in the actual bylaw.
In the bylaw?
So,
It's there.
Where is it?
There's C1 and then there's C2.
C1, C2.
It works.
No, that's the end of this sentence.
4.3 C1.
Sorry, guys. I thought that was, it's going to be one of those.
you're giving me good preparation for town meeting now, Mark.
Yeah, it's going to be like that, I know. Sorry, guys. I didn't.
That's all right.
Okay. Can I ask a nitpicky question on the numbering? Why was this format chosen where it goes, to Mark's point, 4.3C, and then it goes letters, and then instead of like 4.3.1.1.1.1 and down the level?
So go ahead, Fritz.
Sure, so what you're referring to generally, if you look at the building code, they do it that way, but not so much with zoning. They do it with capital letters, I believe, and then they go to lowercase, and same way with the numbering.
Like, why?
I think that's just typically how they format zoning. I'm not an expert on the formatting.
Yeah,
seen it
they
that
try to
way.
track the state statute
Right.
formatting.
I think it's just typical to zoning.
Yeah, and you'll also find that they don't use the word section anywhere. They use that
Right.
Greek ampersand,
subsection.
which is like an 8 with a squiggle on the top.
Yeah, and again, not to be redundant, but when you look at building codes, they very much do it that way. They'll have a 1.2.1 they continue to do it in numbers. That's almost strictly how they do the building code. I don't know that I've ever seen that in a zoning code, or a zoning bylaw, I should
Well, I
say.
actually like it better this way, despite my previous confusion. I think it's better to go back and forth from sections to numbers.
Numbers then letters, capital letters to lowercase. Yeah,
It makes it clear when you're switching from one chapter to the next, or one subsection to the next. I've never really seen it done the other way, so.
And just to keep in mind with general code and having it online, there will be hyperlinks. So if one section refers to another section, you can just click that and it brings you right there to the point of reference. So we're not seeing that now because it's just a PDF copy, but.
All right, Jim. And any other questions on number 27? What's next, Jim?
Section, number 31, section 4.4E3 and 4.7E3 are amended to change multiple buildings to multiple uses. This section of the bylaw refers to uses and not structures. The language has been corrected to avoid confusion as the terms are not interchangeable. So the bylaw defines uses, it also defines structures. It's important to note because people use the terms interchangeably because they don't understand that in the zoning bylaw, they are very different. They're not interchangeable. A building is not a use. A building furthers the purpose of the use. Use is determined by a zoning district. A building then can be built in the zoning district if it furthers the purpose of the use. So it's important to note that multiple buildings and multiple uses are not the same thing. And the bylaw had contradictions in it. And so where it was clear that it referred to uses, we are making that amendment here. So we're changing the designation of multiple uses, I'm sorry, from multiple buildings to multiple uses.
John, can I ask you a question? When I reviewed this, you know, you just go down and you go from 4.4(1), subsection 1, subsection 2, and so that made sense. But now that I'm trying to find 4.4, I'm trying to scroll through and I'm like, where the hell does 4.4 start? When it's on general code, it'll be clear that I'm in section 4, not section 5, and then it'll be clear, so that'll always be on the screen somewhere so that I'll be able to know that I'm still in section 4.4 and I haven't scrolled down to another section. I just find it's hard for me to go directly to a section in the.
This is how they set it up. So they indent things.
Okay,
So if you want to
yeah.
look here, it'll have, I'll go to that, but you can expand. So it shows that whatever you open, it shows that. So if like you open part 1, it would open all of the items in part 1.
All right.
And then if you open chapter 15, it should show you all of the sections within chapter 15.
Okay. It's just, I'm just realizing how hard it is to look at this and say, oh, geez, how do I get to 4.4?
That was
See, now I'm on 4.7. I went right by it.
That was the reason that I asked the question, because I know that zoning codes are usually done that way. I don't personally think that's the best way to do them, because to Mark's point, I am constantly scrolling up to figure out what section I'm in that goes with that next header. But I mean, I'm not going to ask you guys to change it now. You guys did a lot of work and it looks great, so I'm not going to force the issue here. But I think that to that point, when you have a longer code, it's easier to have the reference at each line so you know where you are in the code.
So would you have, so for example, legal documents I often see, and Hazel can speak to this, each line is numbered. I'm not saying that you want to do that.
No.
But you probably want to do section 1, capital A, and then you'd have all the numbers following that, instead of having each section be a derivative of the section, 4.4A. You would just have it 4.1, and then the 1 would be extended on the next one before. But
So, I mean, yeah, I don't want to get off topic because we're going through a lot of stuff.
I would be happy if, so you have section 4.4, and then you just have A, and that's the first paragraph, and then you just have B. I would rather be like, it actually read 4.4A and 4.4B, so the 4.4 carries down throughout that subsection.
Oh, you'd want every subsection numbered that way, instead of just having the subsection there?
Well, instead of just having A, B, C, D, E, because, then you get down to, like E has 1, 2, 3, 4. I would rather have it read 4.4, 1 next to that paragraph 1.
I wish Justin were here, because he was fine with this. He looks at other bylaws, and he was totally fine with this.
I think it's going to be fine online, but somebody looking at a printed copy, certainly looking at the PDF is hard because you're scrolling up and down.
Yeah, when this becomes electronically searchable, you'll be able to just type in, I'm looking for swimming pools. So the sections on swimming pool will come up.
But I think it'll be clear that if I want to go, if somebody says, well, that's in subset, like, let's say somebody comes and asks you, where is the subsection on the mud, right? And you could say, well, look in the mud subsection, that's in section 4 point whatever, right? they can just go to that and click on number 4 and find it. Whereas
Yeah, table
if
of
you told me
contents makes it a lot easier.
4.4, I could scroll through for.
Yeah, because you can't click on it, yes.
Yeah.
Understood.
I think
PDF is
it'll be fine online. And even a paper copy, I think will be fine because
I found this layout easier than our current bylaws. Because
Yes.
when we went through this, I've never read our current bylaws until doing this
Yeah.
and going back and forth.
Right.
I felt like this was one smooth, story, start to finish, and the current one was so choppy and all over
Yes.
the place.
Well, I think once you see a page, I mean, in other words, what we're looking at now is just a small section on the page, but when you see a full page, it then makes more sense.
Yeah.
The other thing, obviously, that could be done is, on the electronic, is a notation on the side, which would maybe track it better.
Yeah, I think my frustration
page.
is mainly from looking at the PDF. And that's going to pretty much go away because you'll have that.
Right.
The ability to click on a section.
So that I think, completely takes away my,
The other thing, too, is remember, because this is electronic and will be amended by general code, if we find that we don't like this numbering next year, let's say, you can make that amendment then. If you find this doesn't work, or let's say Fred gets 20 calls in the next 6 months after this is adopted by people who can't figure it out, that might be a reason to reconsider reformatting again, but let's hope that's not the case.
yeah, no, I honestly, I honestly think the frustration is purely because I'm looking at the PDF, and that's not going to be an issue once it's posted.
Yep.
And then I don't think it would be an issue with a hard copy,
Well, let's hope that if the first article passes,
It's gonna be the same as the PDF.
I totally understand what you're saying, and it makes sense.
Yeah, it might be the same.
if the first article passes, let's hope that no one asks a question about why the format isn't good, because the first article will have approved this format.
Well, I think the answer to that at this point is that, we're in somewhat of a transition stage at this point, and that this is kind of the first time we've come before the town with changes. Obviously, we may have to spend some time using them to see how user-friendly they are, and if further changes need to be made, it can be made at a next town meeting.
And even for us, for Fred and I, and for Justin, who've been using this bylaw for many, many years, looking at their format and going, oh, they've moved that over there. And you have to reorganize your mind to go to that section now. Because for 30 years, I've been looking at the old format.
Right.
And change is difficult sometimes. But I think that once we've had this for just a few months, using it regularly, it'll change. You'll get used to it.
If I may.
Go ahead, Fred.
Sure, thanks, Fred Leonardo. So so a couple of comments. One is that the group agreed, and I would agree with this, outside of zoning geeks like me, you don't generally keep a hard copy. I would say 90 to 95% of the people that call me with zoning questions are looking at our bylaw online.
Fine.
So the searchability becomes key, because virtually nobody that talks to me actually has a written bylaw in front of them. So as long as they can search it, and if the ease of searching it online becomes easier, I think that's important to our customers. I keep a written bylaw, Jim does, Justin may, because we're in the bylaw, if not daily, certainly every few days. So we tab it and things like that. So we don't use it like a traditional person would. So I think that was the difference to me.
So I'm going to admit my eyesight is going. So when I'm looking at the PDF, I'm zoomed in on like just one paragraph and I'm scrolling. So that's part of the problem. When I zoom out and I can see the whole page, it's pretty easy for me to tell that I'm in section 4. And so I don't think it's as big an issue as I thought. So it's purely because I'm blind. And when you're looking at a hard copy, you'll be able to see the whole page and you'll be able to see that you're on.
I've always been in favor of a hard copy until having to go through this process, and that's where I found this much easier.
Oh, I find the online copy, but I'm not sure everyone will. some people.
Now, I
may
need to
want-
work from a printed copy. I'm just one of those people. I mean, I find reading things online very difficult because I find switching from one section to another section much harder. So I will request to get a actual written copy when this is all done, so I can work from a written copy. And I think you'll find that there are people that find it difficult to deal with these things online. I mean, I find it very difficult to figure out, if I need to go to a different section, how I even hold one section and go back and forth, because I do the best I can with a computer, but I want a page I can turn and go back to and say, okay, this page relates to this page. So, but that's me.
Yeah, no, but if you're searching for keywords, it'll cycle you back through, but I
Yeah,
understand.
but I do think, you're not going to go more than 1 or 2 pages before you get to another section. And you're going to see, now I'm in section 4 or 5, I got to go back. I don't think it's as big an issue as I thought it was.
I think Hazel's suggestion is a good middle ground of, in like the footer, putting what section or what article you're in. So that, if you're flipping through the pages, you're just looking there and you're like, oh no, I went to section 3.
Yeah.
I want to go to section 4 somewhere, and then I'd narrow it down to those pages.
I think you just need some notification at the
Yeah,
bottom.
I don't think that that's an amendment to this, though.
No,
We can
that's not
ask
something
for
that needs to be passed, but I
Yeah.
just think in workability,
Yep.
when we start printing it out or putting it electronically, make it easier, because it's so easy in the, when you're doing
This is
this
a hard copy,
online,
So it shows.
on some things on the side, for example, it'll tell you what page you're on.
Well, yeah, the
just-
PDF doesn't have page numbers.
That's what I mean, if you've
So I
got
do
this-
think it should have page
Yeah,
numbers
the
and
section on the
numbers.
side, something like
We
that.
have that in the printed out copy. It was a preliminary draft, Jim.
Yes.
Yeah, so we had it, it's at the top of the page, the section numbers, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
just
Okay.
something.
All
Okay.
right, that's fine.
That's
All right,
fine.
we are way overthinking this, I think, but that's maybe preparing for
No,
town
that's-
meeting, but, I do think it's
Yeah.
good that we're talking about it, because,
We've had these discussions for months now, so it's nothing new to us.
yeah, and I don't want to be one of those ones to nitpick, but I do think, we're going to get questions like this, so it's good to prepare. Jim, when you're ready, you can go to the next. I don't know if we finished with 37 or not.
31. We're on yeah,
Did 31.
I thought we just did 31, didn't we?
yeah, so we're on
Kind of
37.
prompted this whole thing.
We did 31, we're doing 37 now. So number 37 is section 4.8H, item 2E, is amended to change 2 years to 3 years. So this has to do with special permits again. And this refers to special permits granted for senior living projects in the senior living overlay district. The change to 3 years is to bring the bylaw into conformance with the State Zoning Act, Chapter 40A, extending the life of special permits to 3 years before it lapses. And that's similar to number 13, which we already talked about.
Is there a reason for that? I'm sorry, I was thinking about something else.
Just to comply with state law.
Fine.
Yeah, it's all special permits were
That's
extended.
all I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Number 39, section 5.2B is amended to change 6 months to 12 months. This section refers to building permits and special permits. Construction or operations under a building or special permit obtained in conformity with this zoning bylaw, or lawful amendments thereto shall conform to any subsequent amendments of the zoning bylaws unless the use or construction is commenced within a period of not more than 12 months. You can see that 6 has been crossed out. And in this case, I lifted the actual bylaw language so you could see where the change was. Because it's such a small change, people need to understand that this has to do, again, with special permits or construction and operation.
Jim, the only suggestion I have on that is to red line, make the 6 and red.
Sure, I can do that.
and help people see where that changes.
Fred, I assume you were in agreement with that? Oh, okay.
Sorry. My apologies. I don't remember the full context of that, Jim. It's just, if the special permit, right now, that one of the caveats that the ZBA writes in is that special permit has to be enacted within 6 months, which was always kind of the goofy thing. A building permit is technically only good for 6 months. I don't know that that's in conflict with this. I don't know if we talked about that, Jim, but I don't think that means that the building permit has to be pulled and enacted within that 6 months. I may be confusing the
We
matter.
probably should call Deb and discuss that.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up on that. I just want to make sure it's not in conflict with the state building code.
That's what I wondered, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Because technically, a building permit is only good for 6 months, but you get into this whole thing, as long as they start construction, it's
Right.
continuous.
Yeah.
So I apologize, I probably should have looked at that a little bit closer myself. So Jim and I can follow up on that, just to let
Yeah,
the
we
board
should do
know.
that ASAP.
Yeah, we'll make sure there's not a conflict with the state building code.
All right, so assuming we close the hearing tonight and we need to make a change on that,
I wouldn't close the hearing if you're going to change it. You'd have to change it
we
on
don't
town
know
meeting
if we're
floor.
going to change it, Jim. That's the problem. If we don't need to change it, we could make that change on town meeting floor, but that gets complex.
Sure, you want this one?
Well,
Or you want the
maybe,
whole bylaw?
maybe we should leave the public hearing open on this, on Article 30. We closed it on 29. Leave
So-
Article 30 open, just because there may be some other changes that will come up.
Well, okay, but when is, the select board hearing is, the select board meeting is also the 28th, and that's our next meeting.
Right.
I'm presuming, I mean, that's going to be hard because I'm assuming that Jim will have to present at the select board hearing.
Okay. So now I understand the difference. So this has to do with a building permit or a special permit that was issued, and if there is then a change to the zoning bylaw, they must exercise the permit or the building permit within 12 months. So if the zoning bylaw changes, it's the key, that's the key. If the zoning bylaw doesn't change, then it's the 3 years again.
I'm totally confused.
We'll
Try that
let
again.
Fred answer that.
If they get a special permit and then the use changes, they have 12 months to do what they need to do before the new, whatever the new change goes into
They
effect.
have 12 months to start.
To start, yeah.
So if you get a permit to build and then we rezone and take that use out of the pig farm zone and daycare zone, you have 12 months to do your pig farm or your
Are you
Does that
losing?
mean they're only grandfathered in for 12 months? That doesn't
Well, it's in the
I don't know if the
And it
Attorney
was
General
only,
is going
and
to
it
like
was
that,
only
though.
6 months before, so we're giving them 12 months
So,
now.
no, I think as you read this section, if I may, I think it allows you a 12-month grace period if the zoning bylaw changes and you're already commencing something to a previous special permit or building permit.
Will you have to have started?
Yeah, well, you would have to enacted it before the change. You would have had to do something. In other words, if you would, as I read this section, unless I'm reading something wrong, I think you have to take the context of the whole section. So I have John, so he can't read it, but it says, building construction and special permits. Construction or operations under a building permit or special permit obtained in conformity with the zoning bylaw or lawfully amendments thereto shall conform to any subsequent amendments of the zoning bylaw unless the use or construction
is commenced with a period of not more than 12 months after the issuance of such permit in the case involved construction, unless such construction is continued through the completion as continuously and expeditiously as reasonable. So that I'm okay with it.
Yeah, that's fine. Now that you've read it in context, I understand.
Right.
You're still grandfathered in, but if you only have 12 months to start to
So
actually.
what if I made this example? You have a pig farm that's approved conforming with zoning. The town says, I don't want this pig farm, we're going to change zoning. Their special permit is good for 3 years, but now the town is going to change the zoning 16 months after they were granted their permit. It's now gone over the 12 months. They are now not able to do what they still have a year and a half left on their permit for?
It's 12 months from the change.
No, it's 12 months from the granting of the permit.
Well, but if you read, it says, shall conform to any subsequent amendments of the zoning bylaw unless, so your subsequent amendment,
Unless the use or construction is commenced within a period of not more than 12 months after the issuance of such permit.
Right, but what if they start 24 months after the issuance of the special permit?
Because they had 3
And we've already
years.
changed the zoning, technically they would not comply, but that special permit should be good for 3 years, yeah, that makes sense. That seems,
yeah, there could be a conflict there.
maybe we need to take special permit out of that paragraph.
Well, that was, I think, in the original bylaw, we didn't rewrite this whole thing.
Yeah, no, if it hasn't changed, it's from the original bylaw. That's what
Yeah,
I was
so
saying, we've already had it in town.
I guess we go back to Deb at General Code, Jim, and make sure we're not reading that wrong. That might just be a confluence in the way the verbiage is there.
Yep, I made a note of that already, to do that.
It's a valid point, now it's more of a legal opinion. Now you're outside of my realm of expertise.
Where we need Justin.
I understand what he's raising, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I
Do you
don't have
think
my
that I
zoning
should
code.
include the rest of that language that you read? Because I didn't include the last couple sentences in my explanation. In my explanation up here.
Yeah, I think you have to be, on this particular one, Jim, I think we have to get clarification, and yes, I think you'd have to include some more verbiage.
Yeah, I have to include the entire.
I think you've got to
section.
give the whole section. and,
Yeah, I agree.
Redline the,
We might have to add some language like saying, that says, within a period of not more than 12 months for a building permit and not more than 3 years for a special. Some type of language like that.
Well, so I'm not as whipped up about the building permit end of it, because as long as it's continuous and expeditious, those are very broad terms, so it leaves a lot of discretion to the building commissioner of the town.
I mean, what you don't want is someone to start a project knowing that the use which they're going to have may be changed, and you don't want them to start the project and then just leave it.
Right.
What you want is a continuous use to move forward with the project, which essentially is a grandfathering because they're able to use the original use. But if you stop construction, in other words, you just make a beginning start on it, and then knowing that there's going to be this change down the road, you want to make sure that it doesn't sit there like that. So this is putting time limits in on that, I assume is what the purpose of this, part of it, at least part of the purpose for this particular change, is just putting some more.
Right, but I think that takes away the developer's rights under the special permit for the extra time.
No, because he's been told he has to begin. I mean, the important thing is the expedition.
Yeah, but the
and
state law says he doesn't have to
continuation of.
begin for 3 years. Does state law address building permits and how long? Or
I'm sorry?
Yeah, that's six months.
The 12 months, state law says building permits have to begin within 12 months? That's
No.
where we got the 12 months?
6 months.
No, technically, a building permit has to be, you're supposed to start, or, let me go backwards, I'm sorry. By state zone, building code, a permit is only good or is void after 6 months. But the discretion is there as long as you're continuing to make work towards it. We don't generally expire the permit in 6 months. In case in
If you're doing
point,
surveying, for example, if you're doing stuff like that, which has not allowed you to physically begin
Right.
to work, in other words, it's work that's being done in furtherance of getting into the ground.
yes, we oftentimes have houses that take 2 and 3 years to build. If I were to, in any building commissioner or inspector, to expire them after the first 6 months, you would have to expire probably 50% of the building permits out there, as long as there's some continuation of operation.
I don't think that's the question we have, though.
It may not be.
Yeah. Like, I don't disagree with that. I think that makes sense. It's just if you are setting a shorter time period
Than the 3
than the
years.
state
Right.
lays out, then I don't understand how the Attorney General would approve that.
And it could be the way we're reading this too, so that's why.
Yeah, that's why we need to follow up with Deb. And the one
Right,
thing
I
that I've
agree.
learned from the Attorney General is they will warn you that this might cause a lawsuit, but they won't deny or overturn your bylaw unless it's in contradiction to some of the state laws that require you to be in conformance. So for example, let's take a new use that we're all familiar with, marijuana. They allow us to restrict it, but they're not saying you won't be challenged in court.
It could be we're missing a word in there too. The intent may be that you have a year once the bylaw or change in the bylaw is enacted. And that's kind of how my initial impression would be to
I
that.
don't think that would be legal, though. Because they would still be grandfathered under the original permit approved under the previous zoning for
I
3
think
years.
one of the questions, can we be more strict on that than the state?
I don't think we can.
Oh, I know you may be able to.
I think they allow you to be more strict.
Right.
That's generally what they allow.
I mean, we can leave it in, approve it, and the Attorney General can strike that provision.
Well, again, to be honest, I think as Jim has indicated, I think we need to get a little clarification to make sure we're understanding. Because if this question comes up and we're bantering it back and forth, we're going to be in trouble if we don't have a distinct answer for this.
Well, right now, our bylaw says 6 months. So if this fails, it'll be 6 months. And if you were concerned about it being in violation with state law, the Attorney General approved that bylaw at 6 months.
Right, but when was that approved? When the state
Yeah,
still
but that's
says
what I'm
6
going to
months?
ask our consultant.
I mean, if it was approved when the state still allowed 6 months, then they're not going to retroactively look at your bylaw.
Correct.
True.
Unless there's an amendment like this. But I do believe that they allow the towns to be more strict than the bylaw. And again, marijuana is a good example. They don't prohibit towns from excluding the use, but they say if you have to allow medical marijuana, but you don't have to allow recreation. So they
Well,
don't.
that's different, though.
That's- yeah.
The law that legalized marijuana had a provision for towns to exercise a
We had a bylaw for solar that had stricter standards for pesticide application than the state. The state struck that line and said that the state has superseding authority over pesticide management. And I think this is similar to that. State has superseding authority over length of the special permit term.
Well, all right.
It may, I don't know that. I mean,
We've spent
it
a
may.
lot of time on this, okay? Let's get an answer let's make a note to get an answer. We'll leave this open. And
Sure.
hopefully,
We're going to talk to
we'll
our
work out with the
consultant.
town manager how that's going to work with closing the warrant. All right? All right, what's next?
Number 56, Section 6.7F1 is amended to change 2 years to 3 years in the first sentence and to change licensing board to select board in the last sentence. This section refers to special permits. Special permit issued pursuant to this section shall be valid for a period of 3 years from the date of issuance. The change to 3 years is to bring the bylaw into conformance with State Zoning Act, Chapter 40A, extending the time to exercise the provisions of a special permit to 3 years before it lapses, similar to number 13 and number 37. Lastly, there is no licensing board. Granting special permits in Westborough, the select board is the correct reference. So you may know that the select board grants licenses for automotive repair, for establishments serving alcohol. They don't call themselves a licensing board. They are a select board. This has been around since before I've come to town. That reference to licensing board may have been relevant at some point, but it's no longer relevant. It's the select board that does that.
I thought we were keeping this one at 2 years.
I have it changed to 3 years.
I think, yeah, general code changed it to 3 years. It's just my notes say that it should be 2 years. So general code made that change
Oh,
themselves.
that's for marijuana. Yep. I'm sure.
So this, in my note, said that this should be 2 years. 6.7.
Yeah, I remember that discussion. I do remember that discussion.
So the only change is licensing board to select board?
That's what it should be, yeah. At least from my notes, yes.
So what we're going to have to do in this instance, because it's in the warrant, but the warrant hasn't been set yet, so I can delete that paragraph.
So, I mean, I think this plays into the other question that we had. If the locality can reduce the term of a special permit.
Which is stricter.
It should be, general code changed it to 3 years. It's always been in the bylaws 2 years.
Right, but if you if you go by the state regulations, the term of a special permit is 3 years. So they may have
Yeah.
changed it to 3 because that's conforming with the state
Yeah.
requirements.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what they did. Yeah.
So I mean, this is the same question as what we were saying before. Can a municipality reduce the term of a special permit, or does the state have superseding authority over that?
Yeah, that might apply to this.
I thought not. I mean, essentially,
But maybe in
You have to-
maybe in the marijuana state law,
Right.
it allows for shorter term periods for.
right,
special
unless it
permits.
says specifically in it that there's an allowance for a shorter period. Otherwise,
I don't know
if
if
the
it
state
does.
sets, I wouldn't think you could do less than, but unless.
All right, so we have one question on that section. We need to determine whether we can leave it at 2, or if that has to be changed to 3. Leave it at 2, the only change in there is licensing to select board.
And that would just be, that wouldn't be a substantial change.
Not the change from licensing to
Correct.
select. That's just a word change.
Yeah, I
That
think,
could be in that block vote that you had
Yeah, I would
discussed,
think
yeah.
that, yeah, I mean, that's a definition
well,
change.
to be honest, I think we should go through and only address the ones that are questioned. I don't necessarily think we want to even do this presentation. We just address the ones that are questioned.
Yeah, but we
We
have
start
to,
doing this presentation on something that it wasn't even questioned, well, now we're going to get the same kind of,
yeah, but Mark, if we take, the block voting, I would think the first block would be changes in definitions, which change change in definitions and names and that kind of thing, would kind of be a block together, so that you take care of all of those things.
well, so I thought we were going to run down all 75 changes, and somebody would say, question,
No, I was thinking that we do a block first and then run to the ones that were not in the block. So anything that had to do with the change in, to conform to state law, or a change in, like the licensing to board, that kind of thing.
well, let me ask you this. What is the motion actually going to be? Is somebody going to have to make a motion and read through all the language that's changed, or is the motion just
No.
going to be?
You approve the article as written, or
Yeah.
you approve the article as written, except for the following items. And so, for example, the proposal to ask people to question those, and those that are not questioned will be approved as a block. If they pull out this one, let's say number 56, that number 56 could either be approved as written or it could be amended. And then they'd go back to the main motion,
Right.
and the main motion would be now to accept the amendments. They do, then they approve the article.
Right, and I thought we were going to have a handout with all 75 changes.
We will.
Right?
Exactly what you have, exactly what you have.
So we're not, why wouldn't we just read down that list and say, if you have a question on any of these, you question like you do with the budget. And if we only have a question on 3 of them, let's address those 3 questions. Let's not.
So if we do that, I'm going to have to change the presentation to show all 75.
I would
because they
think
can
we,
question any of
yeah,
them.
the whole point would.
Just read the handout and people have the handout. You don't need
Yeah,
a
but Mark,
presentation.
I think that instead of doing it that way, I think if we can take out as a block all the things that I just talked about, and then just address those things that are left, then you can go through those things that are left and ask whether there are any questions on them.
That's what our group, when we got together, it wasn't a block vote that we were discussing. I think we thought we'd have, was it 4 articles, where one article would be a vote on these changes that were just definition changes that we can just zoom through. And then the next article would be.
Substantive.
Exactly.
The
So-
things that we're talking about now.
Yeah, that way we don't get bogged down on definitions, but.
Right, so in other words, of these 75 that we have here, a number of them are just changes in definition, so those could essentially be thrown out. So
But
you-
then general code came back, and Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, but general code came back and said, you're better off going and having them have all the changes on a piece of paper, and then basically the town voting and kind of like a la carte menu. You know, where you can strike some on the floor and then vote the rest in.
Well, I got to be honest, then why don't we just make the motion as written in the warrant and say, any questions?
I mean, you guys,
They all have a handout,
yeah, I mean,
right? If we make a presentation, we're going to be at it for 2 hours over wordsmithing and, I mean,
We don't want to get.
we've been through this before, and I don't find it really that productive. People,
I do.
nobody comes to these public hearings and then they want to, nitpick on town meeting floor, and they have that right, but I don't want to encourage it.
But this is where it should be happening right
Yeah.
now.
It should be happening right now,
But
but
it's
it doesn't
not, and
end up
it's never
happening
going to
that
be.
way.
So what I would say is I think that's a good idea, as long as we still have the cheat sheet for when, because someone's going to ask some questions, and we're going to, like, for this, and what you brought up, like, we have to have answers for, so
Right, but I think if we start making a presentation like this,
it's going to,
we're going to end up with, 20 minutes of questions on each one of these things that you're presenting. And it's just, I'm just not sure it's going to be productive.
I think that's a good strategy to start out by moving it as written in the warrant. And for example, with this one, I still have time to change that language. I can leave the 2 years alone and just make the change licensing board to select board, for example. And then if they do not want to move the question as written in the warrant, I mean, all of the articles written in the warrant, then the town moderator can ask, because everyone will have in their hand all 75 changes, because they're going to be printed in the warrant. All 75 are going to be printed in the warrant. They can question any number one that they want, and then I'll have to be prepared to answer, with the help of Fred and John and Justin, to answer what the change is. And the reason that we went that way is twofold. First, General Code strongly disagreed with us picking and choosing. They said all word changes are substantive changes under the law. And so I didn't take her word for it. I called the Attorney General, and the Attorney General said full disclosure is best. If someone challenges you on the floor and you can't answer, it's probably going to be a no vote. Or if someone appeals to me, I'm going to uphold their appeal. So I already checked that with the Attorney General.
And I'm
Believe me,
fine.
I don't like doing it this way, but I think.
No, but I don't know why we
need.
need to do a presentation on specific
Well,
ones.
it's still full
Unless they
disclosure
question it.
with the printout.
Right, and I
Well-
think that we do the handout, it's in the warrant. The handout, maybe you include some explanations on the complex one if you feel it's necessary, but if we do a presentation on it, well, you know, I think we just see which ones people have questions on, and then you respond to those, and maybe have a slide ready to bring up for each potential.
So what I thought I would do is, we had talked about a cheat sheet, John mentioned it earlier, is I would have an explanation for each of the 75 changes. And that explanation would be handed out at town meeting.
Right.
So then they can read through it. Hopefully people are reading the warrant anyway, but they can read through it at town meeting and say, oh, okay, now I understand that, I don't have a question.
Right, but I'm just saying we don't do this presentation. We just respond to questions. Because if
All right.
we start doing a presentation, it's.
My only
it's gonna-
question is, would you check with Deb on that?
On which?
And if we just say a general motion, you know, just the vote is on the article as presented in the warrant. Is that
So all she
sufficient?
advised is that we have the handout at town meeting.
Okay, and the handout this is a sufficient handout.
Yes, it was produced by her.
Fine.
She
That's-
produced the handout.
That's all I answered.
She wrote the warrant articles.
That's
too.
fine.
Yep.
That's all I'm asking.
All right.
So do you want to proceed with the
Well,
rest of these?
I think we should proceed tonight because, but I'm just not sure.
Well, I think it's at least a good practice run for what to expect. If you guys are having questions on some of these already, then I can only imagine, for what it will be like at
Oh,
town.
it'll be much more.
So,
Every town meeting, everyone here knows that we have these hearings, and nobody comes. They wait for town meeting to
Right.
question it. So if we had nobody here tonight, I expect I'll get 25 questions.
Right, but, all right, so let's go back. Can you go back a slide? Because we obviously have questions on this one.
So this is the 6 months to 12 months.
Right. Change brings the bylaw into conformance with recent. To me, that is cut and dried. It's pretty simple, right? Oh, no, this is the other one we had. Go back one more slide. Sorry, that's the other one we had
Going back to
big
the
issues with. All right, so section 4.8 is amended to change 2 years to 3 years. That brings, that extends the life of the special permit to 3 years.
Going back to 37.
Why do we even need to present that? That seems to be just like, let's just
Yeah, but we
let's just
need.
put an explanation in the handout, and if nobody questions it, then why draw?
Well, that is what you want to do, right? That is what you want
But
for
Mark,
all
that
of
was
us.
the question John wanted clarification, is not the one that you want clarification on?
No, the next
No,
one.
that was the one after.
The one after that?
no, but on both though.
Or no, yeah.
I don't want,
Can we
I don't,
do as a town motion?
I don't want to, I don't know who's going to make the motion, but I don't want to turn it to Jim for
That's changing in 3
presentation.
years, though.
I just want to say, make the motion as printed in the warrant. You have a handout that outlines the questions. If you have questions, we have the town planner here, ready to address those, and leave it at that.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Let's not even make a presentation. Just have a slide ready if somebody asks a question on one of the complex ones. And if it's a simple one, then you just address it even without a slide.
So what I thought I would do is, and what our group agreed to do, was be that we have the handout with the 75 items and what we called a cheat sheet, which was the answers to what we thought would be questions. I would provide the answers at town meeting. So then the moderator, you've made that motion that we approve it as written in the warrant, and the moderator says, if you have questions, please note the number that you're questioning. And then I will have my same explanation to run through. I don't know which numbers they're going to pick, so I have to be able to speak to any of them. But I'm only going to have the explanation that I've already given them.
Okay, so you're not planning on doing this PowerPoint?
Well, I was originally, These were the ones that we
I'm
picked.
recommending that we don't do this PowerPoint.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yep, that's fine.
I agree with that.
So the handout that everyone's going to have is the one that is in our Dropbox.
Yes. And so that handout will be modified. So for example, you're looking at number 31 and 37. I will have this explanation for those two in the handout at town meeting.
Okay.
And I'll have an explanation for all 75 at town meeting. And then if they want to question that, we can discuss it.
So obvious issue, just want to say it, because if I don't, I'm going to be annoyed with myself. This is a bulleted point letter. I have, so it should be numbered.
I don't have that.
Which one are you looking at? Do you mind?
Yeah, I don't see that in my Dropbox. What, is it under?
No, it's an email. I mean, it never got to the Dropbox. It's an email.
It's in the Dropbox. I just got it from the Dropbox.
It's on
Is it
a
in the
regular
250?
email with,
Oh, no, maybe you don't.
it says redlined.
In that section.
The sections are
No,
numbered.
but it's not,
I'm
it's
saying,
not marked
Oh,
like,
they're not.
it's
I'm
not
saying-
marked like this.
Yeah.
This
I
is what I'm
think
working
somebody
off
needs
of.
to say, I have an issue with item number 57.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
What,
And that's the way it is.
Where
in the
is it
warrant.
in the Dropbox? Is it in the 215?
It's the planning warrant articles for town meeting.
Well, the original one was in,
Dated 1/30. Do I not have a new one?
Currently, this is what is in the warrant, exactly like this.
Do we have this?
Yes.
I don't have
You should have
That's in the Dropbox.
it was
Looking
January,
at the Dropbox right now.
wait, it's
not in my
January
Dropbox.
26th.
No, this is January 30th, it says.
Oh, January 26th was the red line copy that Jim sent out.
No, not the red line
Not
copy.
the red line. This says planning warrant articles for annual town meeting 2023, dated 1/30/2023.
Right, that was the new
In
one.
the
But
Dropbox.
where are the bullets? I see bullets under general revision, but under specific revisions, I see numbers.
So maybe I'm looking at a different one.
You might be.
I just,
You might be
I
looking at an
just-
older one.
I don't know how I'm looking at an older one.
Latest one has numbers on it, just like this. That's how it is.
Well, yeah, so that would be great,
Yes.
because referencing bullets, I think, is going to be difficult. But if I have a
So the
different
warrant
version.
will only print these numbers. What I'm going to have in red, this was just as an example, is I will have in red for each one an explanation.
Okay, that works.
And that will be a handout.
So my only question or comment would be, when we raise this question, we ask everyone for which ones they're going to question, right? And then before we start the questioning, can we approve every other? All right, perfect, because if once we narrow
saying-
5,
Yeah.
let's not, once people we get into these conversations, then people are like, let's go over this one, this one, this one. They had the chance up front to choose the ones that they want to question, and then we approve the other ones and then move forward.
That's how the moderator does it.
All
Right,
perfect.
that's-
So there's 75 items, there might be 20 that get questioned.
Yeah, yes.
So the moderator will say, then we're going to vote the remaining 55.
Okay.
As written in the warrant.
Great. That's the best, makes sense to me.
So do you want me to continue?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So we have a question, we left off on this one, 6 to 12 months. We have a question on this, and Fred and I are going to speak with Deb about that. Okay, and we just talked about this one.
What number are we on now?
We're on number 56. 56. So this is regarding marijuana. And this is the 2-year term, which our consultant recommended that we change to 3. But after we reviewed it in our group, Justin recommended that we keep it at 2 because of the nature of the permit. It's marijuana. And the town had voted before to have it be 2 years, and he recommended we don't change it.
well,
Is that how you guys remember it?
Wait a minute, we're on 56?
Yes.
Yeah. number
But it
56.
says, is amended to change 2 years to 3 years, because you said Justin wants it to be 2.
My mistake. My
Yeah,
mistake.
but you're going
John reminded
to
me.
see if that, if
Thank
we can
you.
do that, or if
Right.
if state law is going to.
Well, our group, the 4 of us decided we were not going to change it. We're going to leave
Okay.
it at 2.
No, I know, but by not changing it, is that going to,
I'll ask our consultant. I made a note already to ask.
because, I mean, we may want to change it to 3 years if the Attorney General's, because the Attorney General's going to review the whole
that's
new
right.
bylaw. They're
And they
not
already
gonna just
reviewed the 2
review
years.
changes.
We've already reviewed the 2 years. There's been no change in the statute. for marijuana.
Yeah, that's what the bylaw as it's written today.
Right, it says 2 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, general code just changed it to
Okay.
comply.
I mean, we can leave it at 2, I guess, but I think if,
I think it's worth asking.
yeah, I think it's worth asking. It's going to be, it may be the same,
So she recommended it be changed to 3 to be consistent with all other special permits. All of our other special permits.
all right, well, let's see if we can leave it at 2.
I'll get clarification. Okay, so here we're starting new again. The number 63, we flagged because it's swimming pools, and everybody wants a swimming pool. So the swimming pools are actually not regulated under zoning, as Fred can tell you. They're regulated under the building code. So they shouldn't be in the zoning. They've been in the zoning for years, and they should never have been in the zoning. So that's my explanation. We're deleting it. Number 67, Section 82D5 is amended as indicated. So a strike through means
Just
deleted.
as far as swimming pools go, you may get a question on that. Make sure that this is not changing what the present building regulations are. In other words, there's
Oh, no, this is only zoning.
No, I know this, but I mean, I can see someone raising their hand and saying, oh, does this mean that, we're not going to have to change those regulations?
Oh, I can add that the building code is not changing. Sure.
That's all I'm asking, because this is always a very tense subject with people.
No, it won't let me do that. Okay, never mind. All right. Number 67, Section 8.2D5 is amended as indicated. Signs which are mounted to any motor vehicle or trailer which is parked for the sole purpose of advertising or directing traffic to a business establishment on or off premises are prohibited. And we have struck except by special permit issued by the Select Board, and then only within the Business District BA and BB, and the Industrial IA and IB districts. The reason for this is, this deletion is because the Select Board no longer regulates signage.
So in other words, our locksmith truck that sits out there is no longer allowed.
Yes, correct.
How about tag sale cars parked on Main Street?
Temporary event, right?
no, it's directing traffic to a business establishment. I don't think a yard sale is a business.
For the purpose of advertising. I guess advertising
directing
or
traffic
directing
to a
traffic
business establishment.
I have no problem with them. I'm just wondering, I see those a lot, and is that going to be something that people are going to have to deal with? I'm sure that it's a get it
think
gone in
that's a
3
leave
days and we're
alone.
fine kind of a thing.
That's a leave alone.
Well, I think you're,
Let's not worry about it kind of thing.
Right.
I think your more issue would be like a nonprofit doing like a car wash, right? And then the signage for that, or I'm trying to think more of an issue than,
These are all temporary signs.
Yeah.
I think the big issue, quite frankly, is things like the locksmith truck.
Yeah. I'm saying like, I would say be prepared for that question, because people can be like, so now I can't advertise my tag sale on Main Street? Like, come on. Be like,
But
no,
they generally don't pick a vehicle. This only deals with automotives. I mean, they tack their sign on a phone pole, they stick their sign on their front lawn. I mean, right? That's where you see it mostly. Take a walk down West Main Street and see how many staples are in the phone poles.
I'm saying,
There's that, someone does it on their car.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
see
saying
it.
almost every weekend during the
Every
summer, there are
weekend, yeah.
cars
Yeah.
on Main Street. I actually don't mind it. I think it's a genius idea, but, you know, I think people are going to ask that question.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, that means Fred has to be here on Saturday and Sunday now. All right, we'll move on to the next one. Number 72, Section 8.4G is amended as indicated.
Let's go back to that. I mean, it specifically says business establishment. And so consequently, directing someone on a tag sale or something is not a business.
No, it specifically says advertising or directing traffic. So
Well, you can read
advertise-
those together.
Or directing
No,
to a
because the
business
or,
establishment.
it would be advertising,
How about advertising and/or directing? You did it that way.
no.
I don't think that helps.
Because advertising is separated from directing traffic to a business establishment, right? If it should, you should either clarify that it's advertising a business establishment or directing traffic to a business
I
establishment.
mean, I think that the point to make to anybody asking about is this has to do with direction to a business establishment. I mean, I think it ought to say, it ought to have said sole purpose of advertising for a business purpose or directing traffic to a business establishment.
I don't know,
I think that makes it more of an argument that people shouldn't advertise on Main
well, I
Street.
honestly think it has to do with the whole Oxford comma.
Yeah.
Like, should it be advertising, comma, or directing traffic, comma? Or should it just be advertising or direct? Because you could read that as say, anybody who's advertising, whether it's for a business establishment or a yard sale, if they advertise with a sign on
Yeah, see,
their
I think it
car-
can be read advertising or business. I think it
Yeah,
can be
I
one
think-
thing, advertising or directing traffic to a business. So I think it's one,
Yeah, I think if you put the
Thing.
comma after advertising, it would separate them.
Okay.
Okay.
For advertising or directing to a business establishment.
I am not a lawyer, and I am not necessarily the most grammatical person. I've heard of the Oxford comma. I don't know what the legal ruling on that is and how it's applied and whether
I would,
I mean, I feel like we're nitpicking, but
I think you need to think about the intent.
I
of the-
think
of the
as it's
bylaw.
written is correct. I think if you put a comma after
Yeah.
advertising, it would separate advertising as a
Right.
purpose and then directing
right,
traffic as a
right.
purpose.
I mean, I
This is
think, you know,
advertising or
it's a matter of
directing.
interpretation. We know the purpose of this, we know what it is, so that anybody that asks a question, you can get a fairly easy answer on that.
So
So I have a question. Why don't we just strike or directing traffic? Because advertising is advertising.
Or Directing traffic would also be advertising, right?
So, wait a minute, the purpose of the bylaw is the key to how you write the language.
Right.
So the purpose is the key. Then you decide how you punctuate the sentence. The purpose of this bylaw was to stop vehicles from being parked all over town, like the one that you mentioned earlier.
Right.
And there's others that I see regularly
Right.
that are just advertising their business. It doesn't say turn left, or it doesn't say the address, it just says, and you'll look them up on the internet. So that,
Why don't we
that
just-
has been a constant complaint.
Why don't we
from
just take out or directing traffic to? Because directing traffic is still advertising.
Because if they just had an arrow pointing to a certain business establishment, you wouldn't know what it is. They'd have to have the business name on it,
They'd have to have,
which would then be
say,
considered advertising.
ABC liquor
Yeah,
stores.
I don't
over
think
this-
directing traffic, it takes away from this language. I mean, I would just leave it as is. Directing traffic, who cares? It says directing traffic. There may come a situation where this is used. In other words, it
Well, I just don't
becomes
think
so-
we need it, Hazel, and I think it gets confusing because we just had a 5 to 10-minute conversation about whether it was confusing, and so if we
So
take
this
it
is under
out-
the sign bylaw? This is to stop motor vehicles from becoming signs.
Right, so just take out, if we just took out, I think we should take out the words "or directing traffic to" and just leave it at advertising, because that is
I
any
don't,
kind of
yeah,
advertising.
I don't agree. I'd rather see, Fred, what's your thought on this? Because you're the person that's enforcing it.
President Arnold, I don't know if I've made a huge distinction between advertising and directing traffic. I mean, if just a directional sign is allowed by right, so if it's just an arrow and it doesn't have the name of a business, it telling you to go to, Joe's Hardware with a sign or Mary's Hardware with a sign, then you'd have both. You'd have the advertising, you'd have a direction. If you simply had a vehicle with an arrow on it and had no other information, I don't see that as being a violation.
But I have seen signs on the ground that have had arrows pointing in a specific direction with a business name on it.
Yeah, generally, what you see on those are open house signs, and for the most part, I haven't touched those.
That's not even what we're covering.
I think the distinction there, Hazel, is that the business name itself is the advertisement.
Right.
And so if you just had, so to Mark's point, if I'm saying this correctly, if you just had a sign with an arrow, that would be directing traffic.
Right.
But no advertising. No one's going to do that. You're going to have a business name and an arrow, which then would fall under the advertising. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I don't know, I think we're overcomplicating it with or directing traffic to, and just leave it at advertising.
So I can do a strike through on or directing traffic to a business establishment. So purpose of advertising. A business establishment on or off premises are prohibited.
Yeah, me too.
So if that were the case, I'd have to delete the words or directing traffic.
2,
Advertising
a business. So you take out or directing traffic to.
Yes.
Purpose of advertising.
Tried to skirt this by having multiple cars. First one says, follow the arrows to Joe's Crab Shack. You could take down the first sign, but then the arrows are pointless, and that might just be a one-off instance. Oh, well, that loophole's closed.
Yeah, they can't even put a picture of a crab on it.
Right, because that would be advertising.
That's assuming you know what a crab is.
My son goes to Maryland, I know what
I thought they were the, okay, never mind. I thought they were the turtles.
yeah, but Maryland crabs are,
Yeah.
whatever, we're getting way sidetracked, let's go, let's move on. This is,
Okay.
I hope we don't get this silly at town meeting.
Oh, we will.
Or you'll get worse. Okay, section 8.4G is amended as indicated. Violations of this section or any condition of a special permit or approval granted under this section shall be punished by a fine of, and we struck $300 per day, to a graduated system of $50 for the first offense, $100 for the second offense, and $200 for each subsequent offense. The amendment brings the bylaw into conformance with Mass General Law, Section 2117, which reads, Section 17, for prohibiting or regulating the removal of soil, loam, sand, or gravel from land not in public use in whole or in specified districts of the town, and for requiring the erection of a fence or barrier around such area and the finished grading of the same. The Superior Court shall have jurisdiction in equity to compel compliance with any ordinance or bylaw made hereunder. The penalty for violation of any ordinance or bylaw made hereunder shall be as follows. For the first offense, $50. The second offense, $100. For the third offense, $200. So we have tracked the state statute. Whenever there's money involved, we considered it something that people would challenge because property owners want to understand why they're being charged a fine or a fee.
So is this how the penalties are listed in everywhere else in bylaws? Where it's 50 for the first, 100 for, not necessarily the amounts, but like this amount for the first, this amount for the second, and this amount for each subsequent? Or is it, it's, X for the first, Y for the second, and Z for the third and each subsequent? Just for consistency. If this is consistent, I have no problem with it.
So I'm answer the question, but I think when it comes to specific numbers of fines, we're just inviting, the state's going to change it with inflation or whatever, and now we're going to end up being out of whack again down the road, why don't we just change these to say shall be punished by a fine as allowed under state law? Or a fine consistent with state statute or something like that. And that way, Fred will know what the current statute is, and he'll enforce it at 50, 100, 200, and, in 10 years when it's up to 100, 300, 500, he'll enforce it at that level, and we won't have to change the zoning.
Well, in some sections, like we looked at a fine previous, up to an amount. So we
Right, but
did,
I'm suggesting those amounts are going to increase someday, probably soon, right? Given what inflation's doing. And why are we inviting language that we're just going to have to change when we can simplify it with a fine as allowable under state law? Kind of generic language that just requires Fred to know what the state law is.
If I may comment on that, so I would say on that, Jim, we should just check with Deb on that, generally it comes out of 40A, is a section in 40A that references the statute about the $300. I don't remember which section off the top of my head, but as long as we can reference the 40A section that does set the fine amount.
I mean, I think we had another fine amount earlier that we could handle the same way, or maybe I'm wrong.
Can you just reference 40A? Because
Right.
if the state changes that
Yeah.
section, and then you've got to go change your zoning to conform. If you just say, consistent with chapter 40A.
Or as allowed per, or
I would
under.
just say per state statute, because, for example, this one has to do with earth moving, and there's separate state statute just for earth moving.
Yeah, we just say is allowed under
State statute.
and make it that generic. And I just feel like all we're doing with the specifics is we're going to get out of date eventually.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think we want to make sure the wording is correct.
I agree, but we should look at where else we're changing the specific numbers and see if we can make a similar, I think we talked earlier about a $300 fine for, I forget what it was.
Up to $300 fine.
But I don't think we should necessarily say up to $300.
You take it out.
Take it out and say as allowed by state statute.
Up to the maximum allowed by the state.
Yep.
It's not frequently referenced in the zoning bylaw. The earth moving was one example, and then the general fine, but I don't recall a lot of, if any else, place in the bylaw that it actually references that $300 or whatever it may be.
If we're going to, reorganize and come out of this with a document that, I want a document that we're not, is not going to go out of date in 2 years. Even though it's just one minor section, I don't want to have to go back to town meeting and change this to 75.
Right. It's so hard to go to town meeting and discuss this stuff. It really is. I would agree with that. Don't you think that's simpler for you, too?
Yeah, no, I'm fine with that. As long as we get the wording right, that's
And
fine.
I will call Deb tomorrow to ask about that. So that means we would change all of these revisions that have to do with fines.
Well, I think we've only talked about two.
We've talked about 2, but there may be other ones that we didn't, well, actually, you said any of the money.
We'll change
monetary
just the ones that have to do with the fines.
All right, let's,
All right, wait, can I go back to 70, which we skipped over? Please?
Did we skip
I don't think,
72?
No, 70.
well, we didn't skip over it.
We
haven't
didn't
gotten to
flag
70?
70.
Jim didn't have it in his PowerPoint.
Yeah, we didn't
But what do you have with 70 that
Okay.
you need to
All
address?
right, I have a couple of things. What happens if a business changes ownership? The building closes, but if a building just changes ownership, is that going to be,
That would do it. I don't think that should, if the coop gets sold and somebody runs it as the coop still,
no, but I'm thinking about the fact that if it's, and it becomes something else.
but then
Because the
that's
building
the
hasn't
business
closed, it
closes.
is particular closing.
That particular
All right.
business has to then close to
If
become a new
They
business.
mean that, all right. The second thing is, I feel very strongly that this language on this 35% shall not be replaced. I mean, I'm sick and tired of seeing signs that are half demolished, and there's nothing we can do about it.
So we took that out.
Yeah, you took it out, that was just it. But what I'm saying is you took it out, which means that if somebody has a sign that's destroyed by X amount of time, then they don't have to do anything.
So, I'm sorry. So if a sign is damaged or destroyed,
Yeah.
and they want to replace it according to what it looked like before it was destroyed. So was it destroyed by a storm? You know, any sign could be destroyed by a storm. They have the right to replace it the way it was before the storm.
Yeah, but there are-
If they voluntarily leave or they remove the sign, then their new sign must conform with the
I
bylaw.
understand that, but what I'm saying is that there are signs that have been partially destroyed in this town, and they've just sat there as partially destroyed, and nothing's happened about them.
But I think the 35% would keep that happening, because it's saying if it's destroyed by more than 35%, it cannot be replaced unless it complies with the bylaws. So they're just going to leave it there because they're not going to want to build a whole new sign, right? So taking that out means that they could fix it to what it was, non-conforming wise, but it would be a complete sign.
Well, that's true, but I mean, one of the problems has been that there are some signs in town that, you know, are sitting half empty, and they've been like that all the way along. So,
But I don't think the previous language would.
all right, the
make that.
language, I mean, my feeling was the language, what it should be is that if a sign is destroyed, then they have to put up, if they're going to put up a new sign, it has to be in conformity. It cannot go back, you know, it has to conform to the present regulations.
What I'm saying is, if a business, so, for example, the liquor store in the Circle.
Right.
Have not fixed it. I don't know if that sign is conforming or not, but they may not be replacing it, because if they do fix it, they're gonna have to take the whole sign down and put a new sign up, which is an expense. So they may just be leaving it destroyed so that they don't have to replace the sign.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to prevent.
Right,
And that's what we
But
don't
keeping the
want.
language in would further that.
Right, now, if you take that language out, now, well, yes, they can replace that sign with a non-conforming sign, but at least we'll have a new sign there.
All right, so now we're in a situation, all right, so we have a new liquor store there.
Yeah.
Okay, now, are they going to, what are the sign regulations going to say to them? Are they going to change the name on that?
So if they were to say it was still gonna be Cork and Grain,
Yeah,
they could fix the sign. If we took this language out, they could fix the sign as it currently exists. So it's a fixed sign.
that's Cork and Gray,
If
but
they-
they
if we
cannot
went-
change it. They cannot change the name.
No, but if they went and followed the language of the bylaw as it currently stands, they wouldn't fix it, because then they'd have to take the whole sign down and put a whole new sign up, even if it was the exact same sign.
All right, I'm not sure that I agree with you on that, but in
But
this
it's saying-
situation, if the guy at Cork and Grain decides to change the name on that, he's going to have to come into conformity.
Right.
Which means that that large liquor sign that comes out like such is not in conformity.
Right. But if he were to keep, or I don't know if it's a he or she or whoever, if they were to keep it Cork and Grain, they would be incentivized to not fix the sign. Because if they wanted to fix the sign, they would have to, it's been damaged by more than 35%,
Right.
so they'd have to take the entire sign down and put a conforming sign up.
That's right.
So they're saying, well, why would I take this sign down, have an expense for $5,000 to make a new sign, when I can just leave it as this ugly destroyed sign and pay no money?
Well, then how do we ensure that these signs like that are removed?
I think, well, I don't think you can remove it unless they change it, but if you want to have them keep the name, he could at least go and fix that sign. It may still be non-conforming, but at least it's not broken. And then if they want to change the business name, then they would have to make it conforming.
Well, I don't think this really addresses that.
I don't think it does, but I think it takes away the incentive to not replace a broken sign.
Well, I think it moves us in the wrong direction, because people will start doing non-conforming signs, right? I think Hazel's point is she wants conforming signs across the board. So what we're doing is incentivizing a company to go and just fix the sign, and then the sign's non-conforming for the next decade. So
But
it's,
that's if it's the same business. If Cork and Grain were to go out of business and another business were to come in, they wouldn't be able to use that. And that may be a conforming sign, I don't know. but just as an example, say it's non-conforming.
Well, the lighted neon sign is non-conforming.
Interior to the building. So
No,
it's
no,
not a
no, the
sign.
one that sticks out from the building, the neon sign says liquor
The one that you've
store.
hated forever, Hazel, it's not, that's a non-conforming
That's a-
sign.
right.
Albeit it may be conforming someday, but they haven't ever done anything with that, and it doesn't actually advertise cork and grain per se. It's just a generic, I forget what it says on the
Bottled
bottles or
liquors.
whatever.
Says
But that's
Bottled
not the sign.
Yeah,
I'm
bottled
talking about. I'm
liquors.
talking about the name of the business.
No, no,
You're
I
talking
know
about
what
two
you're
different
talking
signs,
about. I
though.
understand that aspect of it, and that's okay. I don't mind that. It's the signs that are non-conforming, and I think that liquor sign is non-conforming and shouldn't be there.
But if it's a previously existing non-conforming, then it's essentially grandfathered in. And then if they go out of business.
Yeah, but, no, well, all right. I mean, there are a couple of other things, but as I said, I don't think this really addresses the problem that we have downtown, and that's what bothers me about this change in this. But I'm not quite sure how to reword it.
How does it,
That-
I don't understand how it wouldn't address it. It's taking away the provision that incentivizes businesses to not replace a broken sign, and then also saying if the business goes out of business, they need to take the non-conforming sign down, which
All
means
right.
the next business in
Okay.
place would have to do a
All
conforming
right,
sign.
so here's a question. All right, so based on that then, cork and grain, for example, if that sign had sat there as abandoned for more than 30 days,
So, okay, so
then the
which sign,
next
the neon
person-
sign or the name sign?
the name sign.
Okay.
All right, if it had been abandoned, not used, in other words, that business was closed more than 30 days. So the next person that came in, whatever sign they put up needs to be conforming.
Yeah,
So, okay.
but that's what this says, because cork and grain would have been closed.
Yeah, but what this doesn't talk about is the abandonment of signs. In other words,
But it says that once a business closes, any non-conforming sign must be removed immediately. So cork and grain closes, they have to remove the non-conforming sign.
it's not a non-conforming sign. The sign that says cork and grain is not a non-conforming sign.
That's correct.
So then it's
That's a
allowed.
conforming sign.
Okay, but then it's allowed.
That is allowed. However, the ways this reads is that once a building closes, they're non-conforming, so it's not a non-conforming, the non-conforming sign part is that liquor store thing, which is non-conforming. It's been abandoned. The language that I like is the 30-day language for abandoning, because then
Oh,
that's,
gotcha. Okay.
that is the part of language that I would like to continue to be in there.
Okay, that makes sense. I
Is
was,
the-
I was focusing on the 35%,
No.
not the 30 days.
it's
Gotcha.
The abandonment part
Gotcha. I understand.
that bothers me, that has been
Yeah.
removed from there.
But this says once a business closes, any non-conforming sign
So yeah, that would supersede the 30 days of
must be removed. So it doesn't even give them 30 days to, it doesn't even say, okay, well, I'm going to open again in 2 weeks under a new
Well,
owner.
yeah,
Well, if the business closes, it doesn't matter, that's it. The non-conforming sign has to go.
Is that going to happen, Fred?
I'll be 100% honest with you, the enforceability of that's going to be slim to none, because once a business moves out, nobody ever removes the sign, and that's been I understand it's been a complaint of some members of this board, but
But to Hazel's point, then the new business would then be forced to take the sign down, because it would be a non-conforming sign. You could say that sign was abandoned. It's now your responsibility, or the building owner's responsibility to take the sign down.
yeah, you're in essence taking away any grandfathering ability of that sign.
Yeah, that's,
That's
That
a
would still
dramatic,
achieve what you're looking for.
it just understand it's a dramatic change to what's been allowed previously till now. That especially comes up on Route 9. So many signs that were street signs, if you will, ground-mounted signs, a lot of the ones on Route 9 probably do not, well, I shouldn't say a lot, but some of them, let me preface that, some of those signs would not conform to today's bylaw, mostly because of the setbacks from Route 9. All those, once you change that or close that business, and that's a very kind of iffy thing, but if you close the business, those signs would have to go away. In the past, they have not.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, look at Bay State Commons. There are signs up there still for businesses that have not been there for 5 years. Yeah,
I don't want to, that's an enforcement issue.
but I agree with you. I just, the abandonment language is the one that I'm concerned with. But anyway, you know, this is probably a discussion that needs to be had with, when the DRB takes over the sign enforcement and regulations in the town. So I'm willing to let this go through as it is at the moment, but that doesn't mean the DRB isn't going to review the whole sign bylaws and come in with some changes that will benefit the downtown.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so I think did we finish 72, Jim?
Yeah. They were going to look at the language for general offense fines.
Right, okay, so
Yes.
what's
We
next?
finished, and I edited it, so I inserted a sentence that says the amendment concerns earth-moving activities under the town's earth-moving bylaw and brings the bylaw into conformance with MGL. Okay? So we're on to number 73. The use regulation schedule is amended in the entry for large-scale ground-mounted solar voltaic installations under accessory uses to change the no to a yes in the AE district. Currently, ground-mounted solar installations are not allowed in this zoning district. The amendment would allow them in compliance with the requirements of the bylaw. The AE district is on Route 9. AE stands for Adult Entertainment. It's a very small district.
Oh, it's the one over by the movie theater. It's over in that general area.
It's where the Honda dealership is.
Yeah.
All right, so that, I don't think is super controversial to me.
No, I don't think it will be. Number 74, and I need to enlarge the typeface on that one. The use regulation schedule is amended in the entry earth removal to remove footnote 1 and change S in all columns to SP. The SP designation changes permitting responsibilities from the ZBA to the planning board. The change is consistent with the current permitting permit the planning board would approve. Special permits for earth moving in all districts. So it should have been SP instead of S. Okay.
All right, what's next?
So summary, and I'm open to anything you might want to add here. The proposed changes bring the town zoning bylaw into conformance with state laws and statutes. The changes make the bylaw more understandable and enforceable. The changes remove inconsistency, redundancy, and streamline the permitting process.
So I'm not even sure we're going to need necessarily, maybe that could be your introductory remarks, because
Yeah, I think you're right.
We're going to necessarily.
Yeah, we may never get to that slide.
Yeah, I'm not sure we're going to do the PowerPoint. We're all in agreement on that, that's just opening up a can of worms that we may not even need to open. So,
I raised one question with Jim. I just want to go back over on the general revisions. I did ask that question about defining what the SPGAs are on page 1. Where did we go on that? Did you ask Deb about that?
That was one of the questions that you asked me earlier.
Right.
So you asked me 3 questions. Can you state that one again? I'm sorry.
Yeah, my question was that I felt that special permit granting authority ought to be defined better
Oh, yes.
in some way in the
So I did get an answer from her on that.
yeah.
So she said that specifically, when special permits are required is defined in the bylaw, when you need a special permit and what the permit is. There is no general definition in our definition section of what a special permit is. She recommended that if we make that change, it should be done at a later date.
Okay.
And not to involve it now.
All right, that's fine. I just felt that, for example, when you read this and it's, you know, you have a definition, special granting permit. Well, nobody knows what that is, and I just would like to see it, I wanted to see it defined better. Specifically, how it's set up, the planning board is in charge with some, so that people would know that various boards had control over special permit granting authority. So if we could wait and do that another time, I don't want to raise it now, but that's sort of, to me, I like to see things defined. So when I look at a definition, definitions mean a great deal to me when I'm reading these things. And so I like things defined better in definitions. So that was my question. But, I'm willing to go ahead and wait on that and maybe look better at the definitions at some point, which I think need to be better defined in the zoning code.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So is there anyone here from the public that wishes to speak on this? Seeing no one, do we have any further questions on this? We're going to continue us to the next meeting, and we'll work out with town manager how that's going to work with their closing of the warrant. They may have to put that last on their agenda, and we may have to give them an update after we take our vote.
So would someone please then make a motion to continue the public hearing for Article 30?
I move that we continue the public hearing on Article 30 of the proposed warrant for the town meeting until our next meeting, which is February 28.
At 6:30.
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? That's 5-0.
That's 5-0, thank you. So I will proceed to Article 31, which probably won't be controversial. So Article 31 is to update the zoning bylaws, pretty generic. The purpose of this amendment is to allow projecting signs in the downtown business district, the downtown planning overlay district, and the Gateway 2 district. Design review board approval required. Also to transfer approval authority for signage permitting in the downtown business district, the downtown planning overlay district, historic districts, and the Gateway 2 districts from the Historic Commission to the Design Review Board.
Jim, I had one question on this, which I could not get answered prior to the time I left the house. When the Historical Commission was set up, is there a mention in the, when it was originally set up, that they would have control over signs?
When they were set up, I wasn't here then.
I know, when it was established, and what I don't know, what I can't remember, and I couldn't find it suddenly, is when it was set up originally.
I don't think it was.
And that's what I couldn't find the original.
Yeah, it seems to me that
thing, as
since I
long
were
as-
here, there were several zoning amendments in expanding or extending
Okay.
the review authority for signage for the Historic
I
Commission.
just would like to go back and check with when the original commission was set up, whether there was any mention of signs in there.
Yeah, but don't you think town meeting can change that even if there was?
Well, they would need to, that's what I'm saying.
And they did.
It would be an additional change, is all I'm
This
saying.
isn't enough to change, there's a separate change that needs to be made in the,
Exactly, there may have to be a separate change made, and that
is
was,
that in the town charter?
I'd be damned if I could find it, sorry. I kept-
So at town meeting, October 19th, 2015, Article 5, the historical district and/or National Register of Properties regarding signage and the authority of the Historic Commission was established. 2015, Article 5. So that section in the current zoning bylaws, which is Section 3337, was established. And there is items.
What I didn't know is if there's a conflict somewhere in there that is giving, where there has to be more than one change in our either bylaws or charter.
I understand your point.
Oh, I see
I don't
what you're saying.
necessarily think we can introduce that change now because that may be something the Historic Commission needs to sponsor.
No, nothing to do with the Historic Commission. No, it would have to do
I
with,
know what Hazel's asking.
But you
She wants to
understand
know
what
if
I'm
there's a
saying.
parallel bylaw in the town bylaw that gives that authority to Historic Commission. I'll
Right.
have to look that up. I don't think there would be, because zoning is the right place for it, but I'll look that up.
Yeah, I couldn't find the original language, which was in maybe 88. The commission was set up originally, what their original duties were, and whether there was any reference in there to that, because then there'd be a conflict. That was my only question on that.
Okay. So assuming we're going forward with this article, the purpose, again, is to allow projecting signs in the districts noted with design review board approval required, and to transfer approval authority for signage permitting in those districts mentioned from the Historic Commission to the design review board. So what is a projecting sign? Projecting signs are signs that are mounted perpendicular to the building facade. Now, we have a definition in our zoning bylaw, and I've summarized it. I could put the actual definition of projecting sign in there, but I think this, in layman's terms, explains it.
And I think that the fact that you've got pictures there, that's all you need. Or a couple of pictures showing what a
Yep.
projected sign is.
I just went online to the Historical Commission. There's some language on the website that would need to be changed.
That I know, yeah, I knew that it'd have to be changed.
All right.
I saw that.
I don't see anything that takes me to answer your question.
No,
So
that was
we'll do
it. I
some more-
could
somebody-
not find the original.
Jim, you can make a note to let.
Yeah, I'll ask the
Yeah.
clerk tomorrow.
Okay.
Couldn't remember what it was.
Okay, so here's an example of projecting signs. This is actually a street view that I took this past weekend in Boston. This is on Charles Street in Boston. You can see that they're mounted on the second-story windows above the window boxes, so they're not at head level. And just so you can see, here's the exact same signs. I've made sure that there were no person's faces visible, but you can see how far above their heads they are. They're mounted to the buildings on the second story. Here's another one also on Charles Street, and you can see the pedestrians down the street and how high above they are, the signs, that is. 1 second, let me catch up. Here's another example of projecting signs in other cities, just so you know that they're not just used in Boston. Here's as far south as New Orleans when I was there. Here's one in Kent, Ohio. It's common. Projecting signs are common in a downtown business district.
And we have them downtown already. Matthew Newton has.
So what are the benefits of
How did they
projecting
get
signs?
data? How did they get data?
They had that sign at their location across the street, the exact same sign.
Right, but was it projecting?
It was approved by the design review board.
So there's a long history of that, Mark. I don't know if we want to go down the road. It was very iffy to why some of those signs were allowed. I don't know that they should.
Well, I mean, I'm not,
So
we're allowed, the whole change is going to allow those, right?
Right.
So let's not get into.
if you read the design review guidelines, the DPOD has its own guidelines, and the design review board can allow projecting signs. 25 West Main Street is a DPOD project. It's in the DPOD.
I'm not talking, I'm talking about their new location across the street.
Because they had a projecting sign there too. They just changed the name on it. So some of this,
Don't ask Mark.
Okay, well, regardless, fine. We're going to allow projecting signs.
Yeah.
Then we don't have to worry about.
Exactly. Just leave, yep.
I
I
think
mean,
you
I
want
like
to
the
leave
looks of
sleeping
that.
dogs
Don't
alone.
get me wrong, I like the looks of that sign,
Yeah.
but it seems like we're making a change that's already been changed. So, I don't know. All right, let's move on.
Okay, so what are the benefits? They create easy visibility for pedestrians on the sidewalk. So as you can see, if you're walking parallel to the building, you can't see the sign that's on the building. But if it's projecting over the sidewalk, you can, because it's in front of you. They are typically found in historic downtown villages like Westborough's town center. They add a sense of place and attractiveness to the streetscape, and they improve business for shopkeepers.
Great.
So just the second part of this article
Go ahead.
is currently both the Historic Commission and the Design Review Board approve signage under differing scenarios. In the downtown business district, in the downtown planning overlay district, and historic districts in the Gateway 2 district. If anyone wants to know where those districts are, I can show them. That's why the zoning map is there. So we want to transfer the signage review authority. Currently, the requirements to apply to different town bodies for permitting makes the process confusing and time-consuming. The DRB reviews architectural changes to building facades and signage. The Historic Commission also reviews signage where the DRB is not involved. It makes sense to combine the review under one authority. The DRB membership has representatives from Historic Commission already. The DRB also has professional graphic designers and architects in its membership. That's a requirement of the zoning. They are professionally trained to review design and materials. The Historic Commission supports this amendment to the bylaw. The benefits of the amendment: projecting signs create better visibility and identification for businesses and shoppers, ultimately improving business and shopper experience. They improve the attractiveness of the streetscape, and they create a more historic atmosphere for the district. Transferring the authority for signage approval from historic to DRB streamlines the permitting process, reduces redundancy and confusion, and reduces time and expenses to the applicant. That's the presentation.
Great. Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Okay, do we want to make a motion on this?
We need to close the public hearing.
Oh, we do. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on the warrant
Article
Article 31. Any discussion of that motion? All those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor of closing the public hearing.
Motion to approve the article as written in the warrant.
I move that we approve the Article 31 as written in the warrant.
Support the article.
Name the article. Support and,
I did Article 31.
okay, is it okay to use support instead of approve?
Sorry, support, yep.
We have a motion of support.
I second that motion.
Okay, Pete seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor of supporting Article 31.
I will circle back with Fred, and we will circle back with Deb on Article 30.
We'll have to talk with Christie too, because if we are going to make a change,
Well, the warrant hasn't been set yet, so I still have
I know,
time.
but it's going to close the same night as our next meeting, so how is that functionally? We're going to have to give her,
Okay.
you know, an A choice and a B choice and send her a text saying, you know, choice A or something like that.
We put it on our agenda first and then have it be on the end of theirs.
I mean, I think basically Jim will get the answer, so he'll know which way to go with it. So he'll probably be able to tell
Right,
Christie.
but you can't vote it till the
Yeah,
meeting.
but, you know, he'll probably be able to tell Christie, look, this is how the draft warrant should read, and if the planning board changes it that night, I'll let you know, but
Can the select board change the warrant on our behalf and then we,
no, the select board sets the warrant.
I think you can still make, you can, I think, as far as, there can be changes made that are non-material, can they not, before the final warrant? I mean, in other words, a non-material change, for example, a grammatical change.
That would, I would argue that's a pretty material change if we go from 2 years to
It would
3
have to be
years.
amended.
Well,
at town meeting
that
floor.
one is.
Right, so I think basically Jim's going to research that. He's going to kind of know the answer and just report back to us so we can close the hearing and make our final vote. But he's going to be able to most likely anticipate that based upon what Deb says, I think. And so I think at some point before the meeting, he can give Christie some draft language if it needs to be changed. And
Or
then we'll have
can we come to a consensus and direct Jim? I mean, for example, do we feel strongly that it should be 3 years, or do we feel strongly it should be 2 years? And could we direct Jim?
I personally don't feel strongly one way or another. I just think it needs to be
I
consistent.
don't either. So anyway, I mean, my feeling is that we could direct Jim to, do the town with it and make the change or not make the change based on his discussions with Christie, as long as we have no strong feelings one way or the other.
So just let me interject, just for a point of information. So for example, the discussion over special permit life or the time before it lapses regarding marijuana, the bylaw currently says 2 years. The Attorney General approved it at 2 years. It had, the laws for regulating marijuana have not changed. The recommendation from General Code was to go to 3 years only because all our other permits are at 3 years. Our group decided that we would leave it at 2 years because it's a controversial topic. And and we felt that it was best to leave it alone. That was actually Justin's words, leave it alone. And he has experience in that type of permitting. You probably know that. He's permitted those facilities across the state. The Attorney General will not review something that's not on the list. So if we don't propose to amend that section of the bylaw, they're not going to look at it. They're going to look at the parts that we amend. So the 75 items that are listed, if we take that out and we leave it as it is, which is 2 years, they're not going to review that. They'll review the amendments. They're not going to review what's already there because they will have already reviewed it once before.
I'd prefer to leave it at 2 years then.
I mean, so just to throw a wrench in the whole thing, I understand that, but then somebody comes in to get a permit, they get somehow granted a special permit, it elapses, they haven't done it, they then take the town to court and say, we should have had 3 years, the bylaw says 2 years, then we're in that position.
Even further, Article 29 replaces the entire zoning bylaw, so the state is going to review the entire zoning bylaw.
No, they're going to review the numbering and the reorganization. They're not going to review the whole bylaw.
They're not going to review the whole thing?
No.
Okay. Well, I mean, we still need an answer on the language for the fines, right? And we still need an answer on the other, the non-conforming 12 months versus 3 years on a special permit. Not non-conforming, but,
No, it's,
6 months to 12 months.
right.
well, we went from 6 to 12.
Oh.
But John made the point, we might need to go, we can do that with a building permit, but we can't, we may
with a
not be able to
special
do that. We certainly can't, got to be careful limiting a special permit unless, if we don't have the authority to do that.
Well, if we're reading that wrong, it's always been an issue, though. Whether it's 2 years or 3 years.
But what, was the bylaw written when the state allowed 6 months? And it just hasn't been changed since that point?
That I don't know without researching.
But that's the question
Yeah.
that we have to answer. So if we're going to change it, we need to keep it. I understand what it has been, but that doesn't mean that's correct.
Yeah, no, correct. I think we just need to look at the whole thing and get you an answer on that.
Well, by that argument, then we just leave it at 6 months because the AG won't review it, and any special permit that isn't acted on in 6 months. Well, you know, I mean, honestly, I'm not suggesting that we do that because I think in reality, we need to probably get our bylaws aligned with the state, or we may suffer, be subject to a lawsuit.
And how friendly do we want to be to development? I mean,
Yeah, I
limiting
mean-
somebody to 6 months is
Yeah.
not a long time.
Maybe the thing to do in this particular situation, I think this is something that probably needs to be thought through a little better and done. If we left it as is at the moment, we could change this, the wording of this in October. And my suggestion is, on that particular section, I don't want to do something precipitous. I'd rather, maybe go back to the zoning committee and talk to Fred and see what makes sense with it, because I don't think it makes sense the way it's written.
I think it might be a simple answer.
So, I mean, what's the problem here? If Jim finds out the answer
If
Are we just
Jim
worried
can
about the
get an
timing
answer-
with the select board? Can we meet earlier so that we can get that done, take a recess, have somebody go walk over to the select board, tell them, and then?
We can
Honestly, I
set our
think-
meeting
I
for
think-
6 o'clock.
I get back to my point. Jim is probably going to know the answer. He's going to be able to give Christie some draft language to insert in that, present it to us, we'll have our discussion. I mean, he may be able to disseminate that answer to us by email even before the meeting. We can't discuss it until the public hearing, but we may be able to vote before the select, I mean, we could just send a
But do we
text
even
over to
need to-
Christie and say that, yeah, go with that language or not.
Right, because the select board can amend the warrant, right? So they could amend the
Once it's
warrant.
closed, well,
What's that?
Once it's closed, they can't.
No, but if Jim knows the language that, if the attorneys say it should be.
Right,
Whatever, or it's
right.
fine how you have it.
Yeah.
Then that's the answer right there, right?
Yeah.
So then he could just, like, to Mark's point, tell Christie, they can amend it as needed before they close the warrant, right?
Right.
And then we would just be voting on the recommendation, which we could do 5 minutes before town meeting.
Right.
So I don't think there's a rush to do that.
Yeah, because they don't need our approval.
Right.
Actually, they don't even need our recommendation.
Right.
They can close the warrant without hearing another word from us.
Right, so I think we're going to probably take whatever Jim
yeah.
relays
no, I
to
agree
us,
with
and then
that.
he can just relay it to the select
Well,
board.
by that argument, we could just close that. And not, but I think we
I
should leave
don't,
that one open.
yeah,
But
I
we
think
can't
if
close it.
he
We already
then can
continued it.
tell
anyway.
us.
It's already been continued, I don't.
If he closes if we close the hearing, he wouldn't be able to legally tell us the change for
Right.
us to then make the
Okay, got it.
recommendation.
All right, so
Why not?
Jim, you'll revise the warrant as needed and get that over to them.
Yes.
We'll discuss any necessary changes on the fines and the time periods or whatever at our next meeting and make a recommendation, and vote a recommendation.
So even if our recommendation comes in after they've closed the warrant, it really doesn't make any difference.
You know, it's something that we could all right, let's not go down that road. I think we have a solution and we'll work it out with.
So just to be clear, I'm going to speak with council and speak with the town clerk about the Historic Commission, and then I'm going to make recommended changes. I'm going to send it to you all. And I'm also going to send it to Christie and say, these are what we believe we're going to move on, but we have to discuss it again. And at our next meeting, we'll close the hearing and vote it, and I'll get you the final warrant.
I think you need to tell Christie that the changes that you're going to send her are the ones that are going to be made. We could either recommend those changes or not.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think that's what I said.
Yeah. But like, I don't think we have any say as to the changes at that point.
Well, once the warrant closes, you don't.
Right,
You're done.
right.
So I'm going to send her what I think are going to be the
If we
changes.
disagree with that recommendation, then we'll have to either recommend that the town support it with a change, this
Yeah.
one thing. We'll have to do that at town meeting floor.
Well,
We'll have
we-
to make sure John
Yeah.
Arnold allows that.
Yeah, Mark, we have the option of, if we want, I would think of, instead of setting our meeting for 6:30 on the 28th, set it for 6 o'clock.
Honestly, I think we're gonna, if we do this first, right, they probably won't close the warrant till later in their meeting, and we'll be able to give her a green light by text. But I think
Okay.
Jim should draft the language based upon his results, get that to Christie so that, you know, all we have to do is discuss that, and if we all agree with that draft, we can send a text over and say, yeah, the planning board just voted to support it as written in the warrant, or, you know, let's not deal with the or until we get to the or, because I think they're relatively, I don't want to say simple, but it's going to be yes or no. You can change it to this or not, right?
I mean, worst case, we can leave not make any changes in those particular articles and wait till October, because we would have the option there of making the changes at that time. So if they stayed as is at the moment, it really doesn't make any difference.
All right, well, let's move on. We've already continued 30, so,
Thank you, Fred.
yeah, Fred, thank you for staying. What else? Any other business?
You don't have any minutes to review, just so you know. And Kristen will be transcribing these minutes from the video, from the Westborough TV video. Your next meeting, you do have a full meeting, 25 Gleason Street, the Ward property will be back, as will the Cumberland Farms project. I think that 1 Gleason Street and 190 to 210 Oak Street will ask for an extension.
I thought Cumbies got pushed off to March.
They're reviewing with the consultant, but let me look at your vote.
The first week of March.
So your vote said,
I'm not going to be there.
Meeting next week, so who really knows?
I sent you an email, did you get it?
Sorry, when did you send it?
Late afternoon. You don't need to look at it now.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to have to look at the minutes, but you will have other things on the agenda at the next meeting. No, you're correct. They asked for a continuance to the first meeting in March. So that would be March 14th, I believe. Or March 15th, because we're meeting on a Wednesday again because we're avoiding election.
Right.
So all you folks that are running for election, you can celebrate that night and not have to come to a planning board meeting.
And Ansari's been moved?
He will not be ready for the next meeting.
That's correct, okay.
All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
That's unanimous, 5-0.
5-0.
Thank you.
So there is a drainage utility.